Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast, is available on all mainstream audio and video feeds. Find out how you can support the show by heading over to patreon.com/criticalframes.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast. It is the week of Shadow of the Erdtree, and it's very exciting. That's going to be our main heavy-hitting story this week. We're going to talk about that and a lot of other PlayStation news. But first, I want to welcome back to the show, Joe. How are you doing? How was your week?
You said that like I've been gone.
I know. I thought that after I said like back to the show, I'm like, okay, well, he's been on every episode. So I meant
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
Summon. That was a summon. That was a mimic summon.
A mimic of Joe. Okay, I thought back as in, it's been like 9 days since we recorded is what I meant, but it did sound like I
Here's the
replaced
thing, dude. Like, it feels a long time. Like I said in the Discord, it feels like this week is dragging.
Yeah.
And it might be because the schedule's all over the place in terms of not necessarily all over the place because we're back to normal now. It's Thursday we're recording, but last week it was Tuesday, and it's like that just makes the whole rest of the week afterwards feel longer and stuff.
Yeah.
So,
I was thinking to myself earlier this week, I'm like, did we skip a week of the podcast or did we quit? And I'm like, no, we didn't quit. Like, it's only been a week. Like, it's just, we 2 days earlier last week and it's been a really slow week. So, yeah. But, in the last week, man, I went to Washington, D.C. I said in the last episode I was going to be going with my wife and daughter, and we went for about 2 days. And my wife had to work the whole time. That's the whole point. The whole reason we went to Washington, D.C. is because she had to go there for her job. So most of the time it was just me and my daughter walking around the hotel, going to the pool, which she was scared of. And then I took her to the White House.
Nice.
So it was fun, but it was kind of crazy because like I like being in like populated areas like New York and stuff like that where just people to people like everywhere, but like this is the first time I've taken my daughter, and it's uncomfortable because I'm holding like not even 2-year-old daughter. I'm like, I don't want her to get hurt, I don't want her to get lost, so I'm just kind of like holding her, and it just like I want to get out of here. So I parked. It cost $26 to park for 1 hour next to the White House. $26.
$26.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So.
That's London prices times 2, dude.
And it was per hour. So like when I got out of the car, I grabbed River. I'm like, we gotta get our butts over to that White House and back because I am not paying $52 for 2 hours.
That's crazy. Yeah,
so it was wild,
dude. So did you drive? So you drove your car, your and Erica's car down there?
Yep.
I assume.
Yep, we drove. Okay, it was about 6 hours. Because it was paid for by her company, we stayed in a really luxurious hotel with like 20 floors and beds that were more comfortable than the one we have at our house. It's like $300 a night. It was very nice. So it was a good time. So that was pretty good. And then I got back home and wrapped up Neon Genesis Evangelion. I finally have completed everything. It's kind of cool that has been chronicled over this podcast because I don't know if it was the first or the second episode that I was like, I think I'm about trying this out, And now I finally watched the entire series and then the 5 movies that follow it. So I've got all that taken care of.
Holy shit.
Absolutely adore this anime, dude. I think, and I've said this already, I could be caught in the hype. We'll revisit in 5 months and see if my brain is still here, but I think it's my favorite anime of all time, even over Dragon Ball Z. Wow. It's got like, because the thing is like Dragon Ball Z doesn't, I mean, I'm sure it has themes, but like, what's the theme of Dragon Ball Z? It's like, good overcomes bad, good and evil. I mean, have you watched Dragon Ball Z before?
I've watched bits of it. I've never watched.
Okay, I mean, like, it's amazing anime, and like has always been my favorite anime because it's like, Goku and friends like powering up and fighting against evil and saving the planet. But like, that's kind of like all it is. And like Neon Genesis Evangelion is like really thought provoking and deep and depressing and introspective of the characters and their thoughts and feelings. And so it's been crazy, dude. Because like basically, and what's so wild about the show, and I won't spoil anything here, even though I totally did in our Discord earlier. And Joe was like, "What the heck, man?" But basically, this is the way that I think you'll find this interesting, Joe. So the entire anime is 26 episodes. That's it.
Oh, right.
Just
okay.
One run of 26 episodes. The last 2 episodes of the series, episode 25 and 26, they ran out of time, and the episodes are not fully finished. and they try to represent the ending of the show philosophically rather than literally.
Right.
So you get through 24 episodes, and that's the end of the show literally, but then it concludes like psychologically in 25 and 26. So back in 1997, when I was 5 and you were not born, right?
Yeah. -2.
Yeah. This show ended and it pissed off everyone to the point where they were sending the writer of the manga, or not the manga. He didn't do the manga. Manga came after. The writer of the show, they were sending him death threats and stuff. It was ridiculous. This is before we had Twitter and everything. This was like handwritten death threats.
How, imagine writing out a letter with
I'm going to kill you if you don't fix the show.
That is crazy, dude. Like,
when it actually took effort to be an incel and a chud.
Chud. Yeah, that's wild, dude. I mean, that kind of reminds me of how like Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain is. Like, it just kind of ends, and it's like it kind of. I mean, it ties into Metal Gear, the start of Metal Gear, in kind of a roundabout way, because that's the next game in the timeline. But in many ways, like, that's wrapped up in extra content. That's just cutscenes called The Lord of the Flies, Chapter 3. And it's just weird. I don't know.
Well, so the thing is so these 2 episodes were so hated that within like 1 year, they made a movie called End of Evangelion, and the movie is just episode 25 and 26 redone. Even when you watch the movie, it starts off by saying this is episode 25 and episode 26, and instead it concludes the series literally rather than psychologically. And that movie was loved and revered and is seen as like the true ending of the series. So then that was in 98. Well, then fast forward from 98 to 2007, almost a decade later, he releases the first movie in a new series called Rebuild of Evangelion. Yeah. And without any spoilers, the best I can say is it's basically what we know Final Fantasy VII Remake series to be, where it's like, this is a retelling of the original story, but is it? And it gets really meta. So so he ended up doing 4 sequel/remake movies, rebuild movies that are from 2007, 2009, 2012, and 2021. It took him 10 years between the last 2. But so now the series is done. Even the rebuilds are done. Yeah. But yeah, it was on one hand, it was a big endeavor, but on the other hand, it's like, if you just watch Dragon Ball Z, that's 250 some episodes, where this was just like 26 episodes plus 5 movies. But
how long are the episodes, sorry?
20 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So they're like Cyberpunk Edge Runners length. Okay.
Yeah. So it actually feels kind of comparable to that in that way. And But yeah, it's just been an incredible show, and I love the characters, and it's just, I want to keep, every day I'm reading more stuff about it. I'm watching YouTube analyses on it. I want to rewatch it again. I bought the Blu-ray, so the Blu-ray came in, so I'm like, now I'm going to rewatch it in Blu-ray quality instead of streaming. So basically my week has been, went to DC, finished End of Neon Genesis Evangelion. I've been playing Nier Automata still, which we will get to later. And I haven't had my car all week because Erica's needed it and her car's in the shop. So I've had people take me to work and bring me back home. Okay. But yeah, what about you? How has your week been, Joe?
What's up with the car?
It's just, we got, oddly, a tie back to, for those of you that don't know, like Joe and I started Critical Frames last year in a different style, and then we quit. Yeah. So this is like the real true official start. But one of the things we've talked about before that led to us quitting before was that my father-in-law died. Well, we just now, even though that happened at the beginning of October, we just now got the estate finished, all the financial and all that stuff finished. So now we have some money that came from that. So we're fixing things up, paying things off, getting a fence installed. And so we took my wife's car in to get like a full service and everything brought up to tip-top shape. So that's been taking a while. So that's basically what's been. But yeah, what about you, Joe?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, so my dad at the weekend, we watched the rest of Two Towers, which was fantastic. And we're about a third the way through Return of the King.
Nice.
Trying to think, where did we get up to? Genuinely can't remember now.
Your dad's seen Two Towers before, like all these.
Yeah. And like one thing he said when he was watching it was and he picked up on it straight away, is like the best part. He said one of my favorite things about these films is that they're like perfect length.
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah, like that's bang on. Like even the
It's
Two
interesting that
Towers
he
and
says
stuff.
that because I would say one of the constant criticisms of those films are that they're too long.
Yeah. No,
So,
I actually disagree with that. I don't know if you do.
I mean,
Like
I disagree with it. Yeah, of
yeah,
course. I watch
yeah.
the extended editions. So,
Yeah. Well, that's what we're watching, and he's like,
yeah,
yeah, they're like the perfect length and stuff, and it's like, yeah, like they're not too short that you don't have enough time to feel you feel the journey,
the
like you
grandeur.
feel
Yeah.
the grandeur of like, and then when you like look at the map, like one of the things that like bothered me about like the Witcher show is like Henry Cavill's Geralt can get from Kaer Morhen in Kedwin from like Valen slash the Northern Realms, the Northern Kingdoms, and like he just basically teleports. Like in one scene he'd
Mm.
be there, and the next
Doesn't
minute
show him
he's
like
over there.
making his way there. Yeah.
And it's dude, it's so far. Like it takes fucking weeks and months to get there, and then when you come away from Lord of the Rings and stuff, you see like, and you look at like the map, for instance, like on Google or whatever, and you see like the rendition of
Yeah.
how and where Sam and Frodo have been and stuff, and it's like, oh my god, it's so good. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's really good.
What was the
And
standout moment of Two Towers for you and your dad? If you could you recall from just like what you were talking
my
about? Or
my dad always loves the Ents like rising up
oh,
and
cool.
kicking the shit out of Saruman's army.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I think that's probably with me. I love the part when Mary and Pippin are like eating and smoking and stuff,
Oh, and
and
laughing at the end.
and
Yeah.
laughing. Yeah, that's absolutely brilliant. But yeah, it's just a fantastic film all the way through. And honestly, like even though I said like I can see the pacing issues in Two Towers, I
Mm,
think now that I've watched it all the way through, it doesn't bother me nowhere near as much as it used to.
mm.
And it's more of an objective criticism comparatively to a subjective criticism.
Yeah.
Helm's Deep is obviously a huge one for me. I think the one of the biggest things for me is the Sam speech towards the end.
Mm,
That's
mhm.
really good. Like that is
Yep.
perfect.
Like they knew they were trying to pull tears out.
Yeah, it got me. Like I wasn't crying, but I was like welling up, because it's just so fucking good. Like, but yeah, we did that, and then around that time as well, we went to the Chapel of Rest to see my great auntie
Mm.
Clarice before she goes to the funeral, which is not this Tuesday coming, but the Tuesday after. And yeah, so dad, dad and me went together and spent some time with her and stuff. And dad was broken up about it, like crying and stuff. And I was just kind of like there for him and stuff. And I actually wrote on a card to put into a coffin. I actually wrote the speech that Gandalf says to Pippin.
I know what you're gonna
In
say. Mm.
Yeah, at the
Return of the
Battle
King.
of Gondor. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I wrote that in
A
because
path that we all must take. Yeah.
yep, yep. And yeah, it was quite emotional to do that. But the reason I did that is I don't know if I've said it on the episode where I spoke about her passing and stuff, but I always used to call her Frodo.
Yeah, I remember you did say that, I
Yeah,
think. Yeah.
just because she was really short. Like she was like
Yeah.
4'10" or something, or if that. So I'd always like tap her on the head and stuff. So yeah, it just felt fitting to write something like that. So yeah, that's been my week, and then I've also been playing. I finished The Last of Us. Since the last episode, because I think I said I got up to the bus depot. I just finished the David section. Finished the
I thought
game.
I could be misremembering. I thought you said that you finished it last week, but then you said you had to do Left Behind. I wonder if I
Uh,
misremembered. I must be misremembering.
no, I think you're
Yeah.
misremembering.
Probably am.
I think I definitely said bus. I got to the bus depot.
Okay.
Part.
Okay. Have you done
Yeah.
Left Behind yet?
Yep. I did it. I
Nice.
got the platinum. Done.
Of course.
Finished.
At least one of us can represent platinums here.
It only took me like 14 hours or something. It's like one of the easiest grinds ever. It's barely longer than the game itself. You just have to make sure you collect all the collectibles as you go through. And do like a couple of things like upgrade all the weapons and lure some enemies into clickers and stuff. But yeah, it's easy comparatively to like Resident Evil where you have to play it 6 or 7 times. And then and so that was brilliant. Loved everything about it. I'll get onto that later in what we've been playing. And then I've started up a playthrough, surprisingly, of Stalker Shadow of Chernobyl, which is the first Stalker game
Hmm.
by GSC Game World. And I've been playing it on the PS5 out of all things because it was on the store sale for £5, which is like nothing. It's peanuts, and I was like, might as well give it a shot. Even though I've played it loads of times, I've played it like dozens of times, but I just wanted to kind of like jump into it, because one of the things that bothers me about, I mean, I'll get onto this more later, but one of the things that bothers me about, like, I always talk about modding and PC and stuff, but that can kind of cloud the feeling of like just jumping into a game. You can spend longer modding a game than actually playing it, and by the time you get into the game, especially with Skyrim and stuff, by the time you get into that game, you kind of lose the luster and the momentum. Yeah, so something else takes you away or whatever. So I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to play vanilla. It's brilliant, dude. Honestly, it's such a great game. But yeah, I'll get into the specifics later. But yeah, that's been my week.
Sweet, man. Yeah, I know you and Darren in the Discord have really come together on talking about Stalker. I feel like that's a series that obviously it's been around for a long time, and it's getting another game here soon. But like, I feel like I'd never heard anyone talk about it like ever prior to you guys. So
yeah, it's quite a low key game, and in all honesty, it's only just starting to become somewhat mainstream because of like the Xbox backing of it.
Yeah,
I mean, it's obviously always been PC centric until recently with those collections they released, and obviously the Stalker 2 stuff. But yeah, it's been a good week up until you and Wes fucking spoiled my ass. I mean, oh my god, I got to talk about Wes, right? Like, shout out to Wes.
You have to.
Like, he did a tweet which talks about the fate of Aerith, and that's all I'll say on that, because now I know clearly what happens in terms of
for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth.
Yeah, for the Rebirth remake saga. And he puts, every time he does a tweet, which is fine, he usually puts like the link from the Twitter from that post into the PS News channel of our Discord to go alongside the news feed that gets pulled from PlayStation Blog. And I'm not kidding, it literally is just there like all the way down, like a machine gun rapid fire of spoilers about Aerith. And I'm just like, oh fuck. And this just comes from the fact that me, Brian, and Wes just had a conversation where I was like, hey Brian, maybe you should talk about Evangelion like in full spoiler territory in the discussion. And then I instantly go into the PlayStation News channel and it's right there for Final Fantasy. I'm like, for fuck's sake.
See, like, and I'm going to give, this is going to be an opportunity for Wes to be listening to this and to be like, oh, fuck you, Brian. But I'm like, this is why I keep Wes around, because he makes me look better. I screwed up first, but then he screwed up worse. So
it was wild, dude. I was like, spoilers everywhere.
Yeah, no, it was pretty bad. But there's going to be no spoilers here. Don't worry about that, guys. Joe, are you ready to get into the news? We actually, we were talking about how it's not been that interesting of a week for news, but then I pulled up 12 different stories. So
yes, yeah, let's go.
All right, here we go. So as we kicked off the episode talking about Shadow of the Erdtree, we want to get into the reviews. Is FromSoftware continuing their streak of complete bangers, or did they have their first misstep? Well, just taking a look and reading a couple excerpts from a few different places, IGN gives the game a 10 out of 10.
Holy shit.
The size of many standalone games all on its own. Erdtree is absolutely jam-packed with some very interesting lore revelations, not to mention the same spectacular visual design and stellar music that accompanies its larger-than-life bosses. You've got what is certainly one of the best DLC expansions ever. That comes from IGN. Gene Park over the Washington Post says, Miyazaki is a liar. Shadow of the Erdtree is more than half the size of Elden Ring. It is a massive expansion that shatters expectations. And I've played 65 hours of it, and I'm still discovering new places and items as of last night. Eurogamer really surprised me. I really usually like them a lot. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't dislike publication because they didn't review a game the way I like. I'm just saying. But Eurogamer said, much of Elden Ring, Shadow of the Erdtree is more of the same grueling beauty, but a shift to explicit storytelling and signposting means its essence as a living, evolving, shared text is lost. And Eurogamer, last I checked, is giving them the lowest score yet with a 6 out of 10, which just... Where it's like, I haven't played the game myself, but like going off of what I know from FromSoft and looking at the peers of Eurogamer, it's pretty much been mostly straight 10s across the board. This seems like very much an outlier. Windows Central says Shadow of the Erdtree isn't just more of the same, it's better. PC Gamer says a masterfully designed expansion to one of the best action RPGs of the last decade, and not only complements the base game, but expands its thematic and systemic scope even further. So everything I've heard is like, this game is over half the size of the base game. It's 60 plus hours. This could have been, I'm stealing someone's words here. I don't know who said this online, but somebody said like any other studio that wasn't FromSoftware would have just sold this as Elden Ring 2 for $70 and they would have got away with it because it is bigger than a lot of full games, and this is just an expansion. So, something else I thought was interesting about this, once again, no spoilers, not that I've played it anyways, but like, I think a lot of people, including myself, thought if we had our characters really built up and powered up, we'd be able to come into this DLC and smoke people. But what we found out is that in very typical FromSoftware fashion, they have found a way to make it so that it doesn't really matter what level you are or what you have or how powerful you are. When you enter this specific DLC zone, your character will not be as strong as they were before. And that's not just because the enemies are higher level. There's other reasons. So, yeah, me and Joe are both really looking forward to this. Joe's going to pick it up here like immediately, like tomorrow or tonight, technically, it comes out.
Yeah, bro.
I am going back and forth on if I'm going to pick it up immediately or not. When I say immediately or not, I mean like today or a week from now. So it's pretty much immediate, pretty much either way. But for me, it's just that I don't have a lot of time and I'm still in Nier Automata. So I'm not sure, but I do want to play it. I'm also terrified of the difficulty. It's never stopped me before, but dang, it seems... I was listening to Gene Park talk on Last Stand Media, and he said that the final boss of the Shadow of the Erdtree was more difficult than the final boss of Sekiro.
Holy shit. More difficult than Ishin?
He said it was more difficult than Ishin, and it took him longer. He said he had to play for 4 days fighting that boss.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so I'm like, dude, I can't. I never could beat Sekiro, so I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can handle this.
Here's the thing. What I will say to that is that everyone has certain bosses and enemies in these games, the Souls games in general, but particularly FromSoft games, that they either get stuck on or they don't. And some people find like things ridiculously easy, or they find certain things ridiculously hard. And the majority, obviously, there is like a overall consensus of who finds the majority of what people find the easiest to the hardest. Obviously, as you go through, things are obviously going to get harder generally, but sometimes people's quirks of playstyle and stuff, especially in Elden Ring and Dark Souls as opposed to Sekiro, because there's like loads of different playstyles and builds you can do. It can oftentimes be like, oh, well, I didn't find this boss very easy, but I'm sure like he's right. I'm sure like the ending boss is like a whole other level to Ishin or whatever. But
to be fair to myself, though, he also said that he spent 3 days fighting Melania, and I only had to fight Melania like 2 or 3 times to beat her. So
damn, Brian, what a chad.
Yeah, so maybe it's
it took me an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, it did. Yeah, it took me like less than 40 minutes to beat her.
Oh, wow.
So. But to be fair, I mean, I leveled up probably more than you. It was like level 170. So.
Oh yeah, you're way higher than me. I think I beat her around 110, 100 or something like that.
Yeah, no, at that point I would just be screwed. But
didn't you like come back to her or something? You didn't like fight her immediately, right?
I fought her like when the game came out once, and I was like, I'm not doing that. And then when I got myself ready for this expansion, I went and fought her and used my mimic, of course.
I was using the mimic as well. Why not?
I was gonna say, I mean, yeah. My brother got me into the Soulsborne series, and when he got me into it, he was very dead serious that you're not a true gamer if you summon anything. So I literally had to beat Bloodborne and Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3 without any summons or any help or any co-op, because my brother would ridicule me so bad. And then when I got to Elden Ring, I just said, bro, deal with it. I'm summoning everything.
Deal with it, bro. Yeah.
So I summoned everything.
Bringing in the art. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But
did he do Radahn just on his own?
I don't know for Elden Ring, but assuming, going off of what my brother always says, like I'm assuming he didn't summon anything in Elden Ring ever.
Oh my lord, Creighton, calm down.
We'll see. I'll have to ask him if he changed it for Elden Ring. But I know but I mean, at least I feel good knowing that I did beat Bloodborne and Dark Souls and stuff on my own at one point. Now I'm just going to summon stuff from now on. But
I've only ever summoned on Elden Ring. I've never summoned on anything else, just because I've felt like I was just missing a cool part of the game if I didn't. It wasn't necessarily that like with time. Yeah, I genuinely feel like the summons are more integral to the overall flow of that game and the mechanics and stuff. And like,
I would argue the bosses are designed for you to have them. So like it's you can definitely not have them, but like I feel like their bosses are even more challenging because they're designed for you to have them.
Yeah, there's a lot more multiple enemy bosses that I've noticed, and multi-staged as well. I mean, like having that like the Elden Beast at the end is wild, and that's one of the reasons why it makes that so hard.
Would I actually consider doing, like, this would be really weird. I'd be like the only person in the world doing it, but like, would I consider doing the day of Shadow of the Erdtree's launch instead of playing Erdtree is playing Dark Souls 1's DLC. I've never played it.
Really?
Yeah, the Storis DLC or whatever.
Storis, yeah.
I wonder if I'd have a hard time with it because my character's already like leveled up high, and I've also beat Orphan of Kos and shit. So like, I wonder if it would even be. I wonder if I'd have a lot of trouble. What do you remember from Dark Souls 1 DLC? Do you remember it being like extremely difficult or?
No.
I feel like I would do well, but
no, I think you'd be fine. Honestly, like I think you sell yourself short. I really do. Like,
well, the reason that I quote unquote sell myself short is because like I spend way more time trying to beat this game than people like you do. Like, do you remember how many times you had to fight the Twin Princes in Dark Souls 3? Because I had to fight him over 150 times to beat him. Probably like less than 10 for you.
I think it only took me like an hour and a half, maybe.
Yeah, it took me days and like 10 hours.
Yeah, dude. Honestly, like it's weird because like Millennia Blade of Mikola.
I know every time I want to say Mikola, even though that's not who she is.
Yeah. She, I think, took me less time to beat than Mog. You know, the Lord of Blood. Honestly, and same with what's the guy with the lightning in Elden Ring?
The lightning.
Yeah, like he has minions around him.
Is it Margit? No.
No. He's like an optional boss in the snowy area. What's his name?
Oh, in the snow area.
No, he's not a dragon. He's a dude with like a lance.
You knew I was about to say Placidusax or whatever his name is.
No, I beat him first time. But like,
really? Wow.
Yeah, I beat him first time. Yeah.
I beat Mog on like my second try. So.
What the hell is that guy's name with the lightning? Like he has like a bunch of like. Hang on, keep talking because I got to find it out now.
He's gonna look up Elden Ring lightning guy from snowy area. He's gonna Google it, and
I'm literally doing that. I'm doing it right now. Commander Nile. Nile.
I don't remember him.
Yeah, like he's like in a dilapidated castle.
It's like when he summons a couple things.
Yeah.
That was tough, dude.
Dude, that guy took me longer than like the final boss of Millennia. Like
he was very tough. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'd constantly close the distance, and he'd hit you with range attacks, and the enemies would like chase you down. But yeah, anyway, we're talking about the base game all the time here because we just love it so. But
yeah, no, Elden Ring is a generational game, one of the best games ever made, 10 out of 10. I'm meaning to go back to my GG and just change that because I gave it a 9 because I was like, because me and Joe have expressed before our issues with Elden Ring.
Yeah,
but objectively, the game's a 10. But anyways,
10. Yeah. 100%.
Joe, what are your thoughts on these scores, which are mostly all 10s, couple 9s? You got the 1.6 from Eurogamer. And then also, what's your hype level out of 10?
Hype level is 10?
No, I said, what is, like, what, it is a 10?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it is a 10.
Nice,
my hype level is,
which is crazy, because I feel like you didn't feel that way earlier in the year when this was months away. Yeah.
To be honest, I was like that with Sekiro as well. Like, these games hit me, like, as soon as they come out, in many ways, or a couple of days before, just because it's like, I think it is like the experience, just like Josh is on Sacred Icon. Like these are the few games and few series, unlike, I mean, got like there's like three. There's honestly there's probably 3 series that does this in gaming. There's God of War, that was a big one for the sort of in the moment experience, the launch stuff. I wouldn't say Halo anymore, just because of what's happened. Obviously,
what's happened?
What's happened?
The cataclysmic event is that it happened to Halo, called 343.
Yeah. The obviously FromSoft games in general, period, full stop. And anything Kojima. But mostly, in all honesty, FromSoft take that cake.
Well, like, you and me, we actually answered the same in the Discord the other day. We were talking about like, what's the one studio you couldn't live without? And you and me both said. It took me a little long because I was like, I can live without any studio, really. But like, I was like, FromSoftware, and then you were like, FromSoftware. Yeah,
FromSoft. Yeah, 100%. I mean, I originally thought like Kojima, but I was like, maybe that's too easy, so I'll say FromSoft. But I mean, 1 and 2, like, come on. But
dude, I've actually been considering. You'll love to hear this, dude. I have been so close to buying Armored Core. Is it 5 or 6? 6.
6.
Armored Core 6 because. Even though, to be fair, I won't get into it. Evangelion's not really about mechs, but on the surface level,
though, right? Yeah.
In the surface level, there's mechs. So I'm kind of like, ooh, I might be in the mood to play some Armored Core. Yeah.
One thing I will say though, Brian, is I know you don't like customizing your characters and stuff, but
you have to beat the bosses.
Armored Core, you've got to be fluid. Like you.
I've heard that. Yeah.
I've changed. Like when I played that game, I mostly found 2 builds, especially like at the start. I found one build that took me. I would say to the halfway point, if I remember correctly. And then like I had to change it massively for a second build for a temporary change for one boss, completely different. I had to relearn how to play basically the game in many ways, or that kind of mech. Because I went from like this fast, nimble, light mech to like a slow, sluggish tank mech in many ways with big guns. And then I went back to being a light mech just with a better build. But you've got like honestly, you've got to be able to vary things up and mess with things. And yeah, I think you'll take to it fine because it's pretty intuitive in how it does it, and it's more forgiving than from Souls games, Soulsborne games and stuff. But yeah, dude, it's a fantastic game.
I've heard the scale is ridiculous in that game, right?
Yeah.
Very cool.
It basically is just every mission is basically just drops you into a big battle zone, and it's just like go ahead. Like it's linear, it's not open world at all.
Yeah.
But there's like big zones you can fly around and stuff. And certain missions will be longer or shorter than others. Like some missions you'll just kind of you'll start and you'll instantly be like, right, you got to take down 3 mechs, and that's the mission. And you're like 1v3 in mechs, and it's the most badass thing ever. But yeah, dude, definitely recommend it for you. But
okay, yeah, totally. Yeah, so for me, I'm probably like it's tough with hype for Shadow of the Erdtree. I'm gonna say a 7 because I am not sure if I'm buying it tomorrow. But if I knew for sure I was buying it tomorrow, I'd probably be like a 9. So it's really more like a 9. It's just like, oh, if I'm not going to play it tomorrow, then it's kind of like, it's not as exciting. But because I haven't pre-ordered it yet. But I don't know. I feel like the hype might get to me. Tomorrow, I'm actually recording for my other podcast when I get home. But then after that, it's the weekend. And it's like, I could just jump in. Plus, I want to be able to have my opinions on like, because like, that's the thing is like, I see myself as someone who sucks ass at these games. So it's always fun for me to like play one. And then go online and be like, yo, guys, I just beat Radon. And then it's like, I feel like I set the expectation so low for myself that when I tell people I beat Radon, I feel like I'm a god. You know?
Yeah,
like, wow, the little weakling beat Radon. Holy shit, you know?
So. You could do it too, yeah. I need to see you play these games. I need to fly over. I need to sit on your sofa and watch you play.
You could do that, but I can tell you exactly what my problem is because Erica has been all but too kind to tell me what my problem is, even though she doesn't have any Souls experience. I hate this is gonna to some people this is gonna sound like what is wrong with you, Brian? I inherently hate learning. And I'm not talking about video games. I'm talking about in life. I don't like to learn. There's ways that I do learn when like something's so much fun. If something's really like fun or interesting to me, I kind of don't notice that I'm learning, and I will. But if I notice that I'm learning at all, I don't want to. So when I fight a boss in Souls game, and it's clear there's like things you need to learn about their move sets or how to beat them, my brain shuts down and refuses to learn. I will instead just throw myself at the boss ad nauseum dozens and dozens and dozens of time until I beat him. So where if I took my time to study him and really play and learn, it wouldn't take as long, but I'm just not going to do that.
Yeah.
It's just not my brain. You know, I just throw myself at the enemy. So
do you often like leave bosses and come back later? Do you do that?
Only in Elden Ring. I never really did that in the other games.
I mean, like as in actually turn the console off and come back.
Oh,
is that a common thing you do? Because I did that a lot in like Sekiro. I do that a lot in traditional.
I would
Souls
say
games.
Yes, but like sometimes I'm turning it off after I've tried the boss for 3 hours. So it's like, I probably should have done it sooner.
Yeah, I've noticed there's like a hard cut-off point for me personally, and in general, like other people as well, from what people have told me, where like after an hour or an hour and a half, like kill it, like just go, like do something else. Because like your brain, it's like learning in general. When you revise for tests and exams and stuff, you do like an hour, 45 minutes, whatever. Obviously, everyone's different depending on the individual, but mostly it's around an hour, and then your brain just shuts off with that, growing those neural pathways. And that's what I do. Honestly, I'm like, right, I'm coming back tomorrow, and literally as soon as you come back tomorrow, like all that's sunk in, and for some reason you're fresh and you're able, and you just like you kill them in 1 or 2 goes.
It's true, dude. Like, it is so weird how Souls works, right? Because so my first Souls experience was Bloodborne in 2017. So 2 years after it came out. That was my first Souls experience. And obviously the game was really hard. You know, I died before I could even get to the first boss, but then you keep running, right? And you keep running. Eventually, then you get down, the running to the boss part's easy. Then you get to the boss and you die and you beat him, and then eventually he's easy. Yeah. Well, so I got through Bloodborne, even though it was my first Souls, at a pretty steady pace. I think it was like my second week playing the game, I got to the final boss. And I got hard capped at the final boss of You know, can I say the final boss's name, or is that too spoiler heavy for Bloodborne? Can I say?
I think you can say his name.
Okay, Gehrman.
Yeah.
I got to Gehrman and I was like hard capped. I couldn't even get him to half health before losing.
Yeah.
I used all my blood vials.
Yep.
I couldn't get him to half health, and I played for hours and hours and hours. And I was like, am I gonna like have to tell people that I got to the last boss of Bloodborne and put it down? Because like I'm not even getting close. And I played 2 days, 2 different nights. I played. I couldn't beat him. And the third day, I was at work, and I was all day long. I was at work. I was like, how am I ever gonna beat this guy? And I came home that night and I beat him on my second try. And then fast forward like 6 years in the future, right after my daughter was born, I played Bloodborne again for the second time. And I get to Gehrman and I am nervous because I'm like, the last time I fought this guy, he broke me. He broke me and I had to rebuild myself.
I will break you.
And I went in to fight Gehrman. Dude, literally first try. And I had tons of blood vials left. It wasn't even hard for me. And I'm like, how could this be the same boss? You know what I mean? It was crazy. It was wild, dude. But yeah. It was good.
Yeah,
he's
a beast. He's a beast. But yeah, in terms of Shadow of the Erdtree, though, I'm hyped as shit. I've got it pre-ordered. What do you think
about that 6 out of 10 review?
I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I kind of want to. I don't want to say anything on this, like I want to hold integrity here and say I don't want to like comment on the writer's words until I read it all. I don't want to be one of those people that, because I haven't read it all, I don't want to be one of those people that instantly runs to the comics. I'm looking at the article right now, 194 comments, and as soon as you click on 194 comments, it goes, Lamau, this is not going to help Eurogamer's reputation as the contrarians of the internet. Interesting perspective, though. And it's
I've never seen them as contrarians either. Really.
Yeah, 100%. And it's just like, okay, guys, like just calm down a minute.
Yeah,
like just relax. You don't need to leave a comment.
Yeah,
it's just one opinion. It doesn't matter. But don't attack the lady that's writing it. But yeah, I'm gonna reserve judgment. I probably will honestly think she's off base. Like if I'm a betting man, like I'll put 100 on the fact that
odds are stacked against her for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, just by the status quo of what's actually being shown here with all the reviews, like no way that this game is, in my opinion, any lower than a 9. So yeah. It probably just doesn't resonate with her, in all honesty. And like, people need to start. Like, this comes back to the thing I always say about these game publications, like, and just publications in general. People need to stop looking at these publications like these reviews represent every single person within that company. They don't.
Yeah.
You have to.
Eurogamer's not being contrarian. Like, First of all, I'm not saying that anyone's being contrarian, but if someone was, it would be the particular writer of this review, not Eurogamer.
Yeah, 100%. But yeah, regardless of the 6 out of 10, like, you know, she has her opinion. I'm really excited for it. It's overall like incredibly positive. It's potential like game of the year shit. It's basically a brand new game.
Be in game of the year. That would be so funny.
I mean,
I think it's worth it. Why not, dude? It's longer than like dude, Halo 3 is like 8 to 10 hours long. This game is like 65 and it's an expansion.
Dude, this is crazy to me though. I mean, the fact that this game is like obviously doing wonders, the fact that it's even out like a year after Armored Core came out and then 2 years after Elden Ring came out, it's like, bro, like, how good is FromSoft? Like,
dude, I gotta buy this day one. I just gotta. The hype is
getting
me, bro.
He's already
I gotta buy it.
That's all I have to say.
Let me just pre-order it on my phone while we're recording. You know.
Brilliant. I didn't have to say much, guys.
I'm at a 9. Yeah.
There we go. Yeah. There we go. But yeah, all I had to say was how good is FromSoft. Yeah,
dude, they're so good,
bro.
Dude,
honestly,
one addendum I wanted to throw out there, I think is interesting. Now we talk about like contrarian and Eurogamer and all that stuff like that. I think it's worth noting that Colin from Sacred Symbols, who worked at IGN for many years, he has said on the record, on his own show on Sacred Symbols, that people who think that they don't get to write the reviews to be what they want, they don't get to, like, he was saying, like, people think, IGN, like, gave this review a high score because they're marketing the game, or they gave it a low score because they're not marketing.
They're in bed. Yeah.
He says that never actually happened. That doesn't happen at all. And like, if you've listened to Colin and you like listen to his show, he will call out stuff all the time that he probably shouldn't if he was trying to remain in people's good graces.
Yeah.
So he has and he also owns his own company. So he has nothing to lose by saying IGN doesn't make people doctor their reviews because of marketing deals or somewhat. So like, this person just probably genuinely thought it was a 6. And I would bet there's probably dozens of people at Eurogamer who probably think this game's like a 10, and they're not the ones who wrote the review. So
it's just how it falls. Some people just don't like these games, or like maybe didn't want more of what Elden
I read
Ring
the review.
originally was given.
No, she adored Elden Ring proper and thought it was one of the best things ever. So to me, listening or reading the review, it sounds like the two major problems for her was one, she said that the game is heavily signposted. The expansion, like no Souls game has ever been. Like they'll be writing in areas to tell you what to do, obviously. Whereas like that's never been done before. And then it seems like she found like a big issue with the final boss, which if the boss is harder than Ishin, maybe she just was frustrated beyond all belief.
So. Well, one thing I will say based on that is from what I can tell with the idea that like obviously there is a requirement to get rid of Mog or Mog. How do you say his name? Is it Mog?
I think it's just Mog, like M-O-G, even though it's not spelled that way.
Yeah, and you have to take down Radahn, right, as well. Radahn is another one you have to take down.
Yeah, but people usually don't mention Radahn as much is because it's like you have to actively like play in a special way to not fight him.
100%. Like he's there along the path when you fight him. But yeah, Mog is definitely out of the way once you get to that blood area. What is that place called again?
Mog's Blood Palace or whatever.
Blood's Palace,
Palace of Blood or something. I never beat Mog until a month ago because I was like, well, he's hard and I don't need to fight him.
He's a fucking ball ache, dude. Like, I fought him with a bleed build, so he's basically like...
That's what I fought him with,
Yeah, he's so difficult with the bleed build because he is blood. One thing I am seeing, though, with Elden Ring is that because even though you have the requirements, like I said, it's not like you have to, like with other Souls games, you have to go in with the character you have necessarily. Like everyone is back down to like square one in many ways, and you have to like level differently once you're in this DLC. That combined with what this review is saying, Alexa, see, this is what I'm saying. This kind of stuff, this is why I'm not like a fan of just like disregarding harsh criticism of games that are like massively like glorified in this regard, because like Alexis here, the writer for this Eurogamer article, she's obviously saying something pretty crucial to like her experience, and it does matter. And it's one of those things where it's like it's giving me insight in terms of, even though I might not agree with it fully with the score, most likely if I'm a betting man, like I've said previously, it might not like that's giving me insight in terms of like, is this a DLC that's allowing more people in, more casual audience, being more accessible, stuff like that. The lack of requirement, the lack of follow-up from like, keeping your build going. And also just like I said, showing the pathways and stuff and signposting things and stuff like that. Is this like FromSoft trying out ways of kind of like bringing people in that aren't necessarily like, Souls hardcore, Souls purists, and they kind of did that with the original Elden Ring release. They started to add like bits and bobs, different sort of like map markers and stuff like that post release. They tried to make things more accessible because they realized very quickly that this game was a water cooler effect, and it was becoming something that was like bigger than just a FromSoft Souls hardcore.
Over 25 million copies sold.
Exactly. Yeah, people that weren't even gamers were playing Elden Ring / talking about Elden Ring with their family and friends and stuff. And I think maybe what they're trying to do with this DLC, with those little elements that this writer, this journalist, and this article is suggesting and saying, is that they're trying to like bring that accessibility maybe more so into the DLC than ever before, because maybe because they're marketing it as an expansion, they're probably thinking this might not sell as well. So maybe giving us like a bit of a step up, well,
plenty of people haven't played the base game in over a year, so it's like 100%. Bring us back in, So that's the one thing I always fail to mention when I bring up my like twin princes fight that took me forever. This is going to recontextualize the whole story when I tell you this. I always leave this part out.
Okay,
I had got to twin princes, couldn't, and fought him like 5 times, couldn't beat him, put the game down, and returned exactly to that fight like a year later without any prep. So it was me starting up the game and playing my character who I had no muscle memory. I had no memory and just throwing myself at the boss. Like, that's probably why it took me so long.
That's crazy, dude. Yeah. Like, even if I'm not at a boss fight, say I'm only like halfway through like a Souls experience, I always restart. I can't like, it's the hardest series to get back into. I talk about like Skyrim and stuff, but that's just like more of a progress reason to not carry on. This is a genuine like sort of melding into the game reason. Like, I need to be one with those mechanics. But yeah, very excited for this game. The reviews are looking awesome.
You know what I thought was interesting? You touched on like, this person's review, like it's their experience and you don't want to judge too harshly on it. I remember when the Starfield reviews came out and there was the IGN 7 out of 10 for Starfield. And I remember people losing their minds. And I'm proud to say I never lost my mind over it. I was just like, okay, totally fair, whatever. But I did say, I was like, I seriously doubt that Starfield is a 7 out of 10. Well, even though I do give Starfield an 8 out of 10 myself, like
you can see it though.
Months later, I was like, that 7 out of 10, especially reading it, that 100%. Was a very fair review. Like, it's not off base at all. So it's like, and I know, like, for as much hate as that game has got, there's definitely a lot of people, I'm sure, that were changing their tune and were like, they would agree with him now. They might even give it a lower score. So yeah, you got to watch yourself, with that kind of stuff. So
I might go and read that article back, because since I only talked about and thought about that article literally as soon as I was when it was the lead up to launch for Starfield, and I kind of feel like I haven't gone back to see if I resonate with that review more so than, because when I got into Starfield, I was like, this game's like a 9 out of 10. Like, it
felt awesome. Yeah.
For me, comparatively to a lot of people, I think, because a lot of people think it gets better as you go forward.
I think the first 5+ hours are pretty rough. Personally,
I had much. Yeah, mine's the opposite. I'm completely juxtapositioning in that. But
cool.
Crazy.
All right, well, let's go into some more FromSoftware conversation. We have 3 different articles that touch on interviews that Miyazaki had, and mostly revolving around Bloodborne here. So this first one is from Game Informer. Hidetaka Miyazaki talks why Bloodborne is special to him and how it led to Elden Ring. Where do I want to touch on this article? I don't want to read the whole thing because there's so much here. When I mentioned that this comes from Miyazaki. When I mentioned that Bloodborne was the first FromSoftware game that clicked with me, Miyazaki smiles. I'm very glad to hear that, he exclaims. Bloodborne is a special game for me as well. I'm very, very happy to hear you say that. I then follow up asking the director why the critically acclaimed title sticks out of the vast pool of his other beloved creations. A couple of reasons, he begins. The first one being it was probably one of the most challenging development cycles we've had from a studio perspective. The second, perhaps bigger element is how personal it was for me, in the sense that I've imparted a lot of my own ideas into this game, whether it be story, the world building component, or even the game mechanics and game systems that are in place. It is perhaps the strongest reflection of my type of flavoring of a game that one can experience. So I just thought that was cool, because this is my favorite FromSoft game. A lot of people's favorites. Not your favorite, Joe. It's not even your top. Is it even your top 3? Bloodborne
of
all FromSoft.
Because
I feel like you're not as sweet on this one as everyone else.
No, I would say it's not. I would honestly, I would probably say it's, I don't know, it's neck and neck between I gotta say Armored Core's in there, top 3 now.
I thought it was for Armored Core, Sekiro, and
it's hard because Dark Souls, I much prefer the world of Dark Souls, but I much prefer the gameplay and the flow of Sekiro. So they kind of battle for first place a lot. But yeah, third place is definitely Armored Core. It's so fucking good, dude. Bloodborne's close though. I mean, Dark Souls 3, maybe Bloodborne after that. Yeah.
Reading along here a little further. However, Miyazaki's influence is undeniable in the entire FromSoftware catalog, which can likely be attributed to the fact that he has been heavily involved in the stage and level design from Demon's Souls all the way up to Elden Ring. Quote, my approach of making games as the game director, it's like sandwiching from a very high conceptual level and painting the final image of what we're trying to achieve, as well as going really granular on some of the detailed elements of what the players experience, he says. By sandwiching the game development process, the middle almost has only one place to go, which is completing that whole experience. Of course, the high-level conceptual stuff might be easy to imagine, but the details that I pick and choose to oversee myself, level design is one of them, because I think the experience really creates and raises the floor of what players are going to feel and experience through the game design. This is true with Elden Ring and true with Dark Souls as well. I'll look at what's being done and say, all right, this, and this I'm going to oversee, because I know which points in the experience are going to be the most effective and sandwich the high-level vision plus the details that players see. This influence and approach carried into Elden Ring, the latest critically acclaimed FromSoftware title in the Souls-like subgenre. Quote, in the case of Elden Ring, there was a very high-level conceptual vision, and then there were the details, Miyazaki says. The defining details for me throughout that game was artwork, the level design, the animation, as well as the text you see on screen. I think that was the strongest supporting factor that helped alleviate the entire experience for players. So I just thought, it's easy for me to take anything Miyazaki says and be like, oh, yeah, he's a genius, because every game he's made has been masterpiece level. But that does seem so smart. And I'm not going to pretend like I know what game development's like or what other leaders of their studios are like. But the idea of like, here's a high conceptual idea of what this game is. Let me pick out 3 or 4 points of the game that I feel are going to be super integral to its quality, and I will personally oversee it. And then everyone else will be doing the things around it, and we'll sandwich it together. Because it's like him being like, okay, I'm going to touch on level design, art, music, and the weapons. And then like, okay, so everything else, like maybe the bosses, maybe the clothing of how things look in the game, the texture, that's not him. But he's touching on these really integral points, and that's where you can feel his consistent vision through every game. So dude's a genius. Do you want to touch on that at all? Before I got 2 more articles from him, but
I'll touch on it. One thing I will say is it shows how how much of a veteran of a developer he is as an individual, and how he has his finger on the pulse. Very much an auteur, just like Kojima is in many ways. People like to compare the two, and yeah, dude, it's so cool. And I also just love how he shows that in with his words that he trusts obviously his team and his like line managers under him within each department to carry out what will be best for the game. So it always feels like it's not all up its own arse Miyazaki, which is something that like a lot of people look at Kojima with a side eye about, because he is like them games are Kojima. Everything about everything about Death Stranding, for example, is a prime one. Probably the best example. It's all Kojima. It's so Kojima. It feels like you're inside of him in many ways. And with Hidetaka Miyazaki's approach, it feels like it is his game, and you can tell from the quality that it's his game. But you can also see that he has elements, much greater elements of creation that come into the product that are outside his own mind. But it's still a consistent vision enough because he's touching on those areas that you just said.
It's strange. It does feel like it's less just him than like Kojima. For whatever intent there is, that's how it feels.
Yeah, 100%. And for that reason, like it always kind of feels like it appeals to a lot more people than what someone like Kojima would make. And also, it's probably more a guaranteed hit because he's getting more opinions in. It's kind of like writing, right? Like, if you write a book on your own or you write a script or whatever, if you have no one, like, checking that shit, you have no one editing, you don't have an editor, you're gonna, like, write yourself into a fucking tunnel, you know what I mean? And you're not gonna be able to come out of that. And when you do come out of that, it's just gonna be like, well, it's all just, like, mumbo-jumbo crap, basically. And no one has, like, quality controlled this. And it's very similar in the way that, like, Kojima works. It's not as bad, but Kojima's like that in a lot of ways. And Hidetaka Miyazaki from the start with Elden Ring got in like George R.R. Martin to like pen the idea of the world. From the start, he was open to ideas and stuff like that, and that just allows just a breadth of ideas and executions going on in the game. And this is what you get in the end. You get a team that is working incredibly well together, and you get a game that is basically generational. So
what blows my mind? Have you heard what game inspired him to get into game development?
I think I have, but I've forgotten.
Eco.
Yeah.
And to be fair, I've never played Eco, but I've looked into it heavily because I liked Shadow of the Colossus. And Eco just seems like such a, to someone who hasn't played it yet, it just seems like such an uninteresting game. But the thing is he's one of many developers who cite Eco as inspiration. So it's crazy how inspirational that game is when it seems so mundane, but I do need to play it sometime. I don't have a way to play it currently. But
definitely. Yeah.
That'd be interesting. Okay, let's move on to the next FromSoftware article. We got a bunch this week. Of course, him making the rounds as the new DLC comes out. That's going to feel good for a director when they've spent like heads down developing a game for several years, and then they could finally come out and just talk to people about this product that's behind them and like how it's done.
Yeah, definitely.
So FromSoftware boss addresses gaming industry layoffs. As long as this company is my responsibility, I would not let that happen, he says. So more stroking the ego of Miyazaki here. He said,
it's good.
Speaking to myself and this company, I want to say that this is not something I would wish on the staff at FromSoftware in a million years, Miyazaki said. I'm pretty sure our parent company, Katakawa, understands that and shares that view. I think it was the old ex-president of Nintendo, Iwata-san, who said that people who are afraid of losing their jobs are afraid of making good things. I'm paraphrasing that, but I totally share this view, Miyazaki said. I think it is true. And I think the people at Katakawa, our parent company, understand that I hold the view very strongly. While we can't say 100%, we can't say with complete certainty what the future is going to hold for From or Katakawa, sorry. At least as long as this company is my responsibility, that's something I would not let happen. So hopefully our players and our fans can take a little bit of assurance from that. I know it's easy to believe the guy when you love the guy already, but it's like, if you're going to go out and say something like that, it does really feel like he would go down with the ship before like cutting half the staff so he can keep his paycheck,
Yep.
So that's really cool. Let me read this one more thing coming from him as well. We can kind of comment on both of those. This is from PC Gamer. Hidetaka Miyazaki knows for a fact other FromSoftware devs want a Bloodborne PC port. If I say I want one, I'll get in trouble, but it's nothing I'm opposed to. Very strange. So reading forward here. I was obviously not the first person to ask Miyazaki about returning to Bloodborne or making a sequel. Just a few months ago, he told IGN that FromSoftware doesn't own the IP rights. Unfortunately, and I've said this in other reviews, it's not in my place to talk about Bloodborne specifically, he answered at the time. I tried a slightly different approach, making myself the sacrificial lamb. I said I'd get in trouble if I didn't ask this question, then led off by acknowledging that I know FromSoftware doesn't own Bloodborne. But there are millions of PC gamers out there still holding on to hope, I said. Would he, Miyazaki, personally like to see Bloodborne come to PC someday? This got a laugh from the FromSoftware crew and a genuine answer. Quote, I know for a fact these guys want a Bloodborne PC port, Miyazaki said, referring to FromSoftware producer Yasuhiro Katayo and interpreter Bobby Simpson seated at the conference table near him. If I say I want one, I'll get in trouble as well, but it's nothing I'm opposed to. I thought that would be the end of the topic, but Miyazaki went on to elaborate on his answer. Obviously, as one of the creators of Bloodborne, my personal, pure, honest opinion is I'd love more players to be able to enjoy it, especially as a game that is now coming of age, one of those games of the past that gets lost on older hardware. I think any game like that, it'd be nice to have the opportunity for more players to be able to experience that and relive this relic of the past. So as far as I'm concerned, that's definitely not something I'd be opposed to. So this has been a conversation going on for years. It's not news to us that Sony owns the rights to Bloodborne. So for those of you that don't know, Sony had a deal with FromSoftware. FromSoftware would develop, with some help from Japan Studio, which is no longer around, and would develop a new Souls-like game, but under a new IP called Bloodborne for the PlayStation exclusively, and the IP would be owned by Sony. Of course, the game comes out, huge hit, people love it, one of the best PlayStation games of all time. It's been 9 years now since the game came out, and the game has never been updated to run better on PlayStation 5. It's never been remastered. It's never been put on PC. It's never been remade. Nothing has been done with this game, despite it being one of the most common requests from the PlayStation fan base. And then he says stuff like this about getting in trouble and all that stuff. And it's like, what is the deal with Bloodborne, do you think, Joe? Like, I know that Sony has to be the one to say, let's do it. But why would Sony not want to do it? Is there something bigger there that's keeping them from doing it? Because if you go back to like what year was it? The E3 of Dreams. I think it was 2015. That's where they announced Final Fantasy VII Remake for the first time, Shenmue 3. I think it was The Last Guardian. Like all these games people wanted that they didn't think was going to happen, and it all happened. And also, like, I'm pretty sure like Sony gave up the rights to the original Crash Bandicoot PS1 games so that they could be remastered by Activision. So it's common for Sony to give people their dreams to get good press and make sales. Why wouldn't you do Bloodborne? Why wouldn't you at least do a PS5 version that's like 60 frames? What do you think's keeping them, Joe? I have no idea other than just their mind is focused elsewhere. I don't have any clue.
I don't think it's necessarily like it's one thing. I think it's a mixture of, I mean, we've spoken about it before on this podcast. We spoke about it in relation to when they were doing the merchandise for Bloodborne.
Oh yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So what Miyazaki said now is basically just confirmed that Bloodborne's not doing anything right now, despite what we were hoping for at that point in time. But here's the thing: I think it's a mixture of things. I think it's a mixture of FromSoft being so hands-on, creating a shit ton of games under, Bandai Namco, and just going hard in the paint. I mean, I've just literally said that they're releasing a game every year. I mean, for fuck's sake, like at this level, it's very rare we see games of this
Yeah.
level at this level of frequency. It's
And not
just
to interrupt you, but I want to put this out there for your Demon Souls remake was made by Sony, so just putting that out there. So
that is true. And I think, I mean, that adds another thing that I'm now thought of as well. But I think it's also, I mean, Bloodborne has only sold like what 7.5 million units or something like that on the PS4.
I mean, I don't know, but that sounds right.
Yeah. I think it's about 7 million units, 8 million units.
Demon Souls was less than that, though.
Yeah, but I think what it is I think that Sony genuinely don't look at it like it's making enough money to warrant them bringing FromSoftware back as a somewhat internal, but obviously also outside studio.
Oh, okay. I wouldn't think they would bring FromSoftware back. I would assume this would either be a patch of the old code or a remake by someone like Bluepoint. That's what I have assumed. I've never assumed FromSoftware would be involved.
But I wonder, like, whether there's something contractually that, even though obviously Sony owns the rights,
they have to involve FromSoft.
FromSoft have a clause in that contract where it basically says, like, we have to be involved with this, whether it's overseeing, so like a production level
and that
role.
wouldn't be there for Demon Souls, you know it, because that was their first one. Yeah, you're probably right, dude, because like if it comes down to like, oh, they're weighing the options, they're like, okay, this isn't like a multi-franchise or a multi-game franchise. It only sold like 7 million copies. It's been gone for 9 years. If we have to do all this legal finagling with FromSoftware to get it done, we're just not going to do it. Where Demon Souls, it was probably like, the IP is just sitting on our back shelf. Let's remake it.
Get it done. Yeah, get it done.
That's smart, dude. I think you nailed it. I really do.
Yeah, and I think that I mean that lines up massively with what Hidetaka Miyazaki says about Bloodborne. It's his baby. You know, like obviously people love Elden Ring, and obviously these are all like his creations, but clearly like he's the most fond of Bloodborne, and he's had the most creative juices from him flowing into that. You know, and yeah, dude, I don't know. This, like he says, this game needs to get a remaster. It needs to get some form of a remake. Even if you charge £70 for it, $70, and it's like a Last of Us Part 1 remake, like I'll buy it. Like I'm sick of playing this game at 30 frames per second, dude. And even then, it feels like it's poorly paced. Like the frame pacing in that game, it doesn't feel.
It's not steady 30.
No, it's not at all. It's all over the place. So yeah, dude. And I mean, the fact that he's like, if I say I want one, I'll get in trouble. It's like Sony, like chill out, dude. Like let him. Let him fucking create.
Like, well, and I wonder if it's because, like, I mean, he doesn't own FromSoftware, you know, Miyazaki.
No.
So I wonder if it's a matter of, like, for one other perspective could be, like, maybe Sony does want this, but there is a clause with FromSoftware. And whenever they try to work something out, it's like, well, FromSoftware is working round the clock on Elden Ring and DLCs and Sekiro and Armored Core, and they just can't get it together. So it's just kind of important. So it's like Miyazaki, if he's like, I want it, and the fans are like, whoa, Miyazaki wants it. Why are we not getting it? And then it looks like, okay, well, is it Sony? Is it FromSoftware? He doesn't want to put baggage on his own company, you know? So.
Yeah. And I think in a lot of ways, like this could rock the boat a little bit in the sense that, I mean, they would have had conversations behind the scenes, but now that this is in the open, that he wants to publicly do one. I think that it'll potentially like push Sony to like act on that, based on a small modicum amount of fan sort of outcry, and the fact that like the Emperor has no clothes now in many ways. Obviously, we probably need more details in terms of how, you know, the details are in terms of that contract and stuff. But ultimately, like if the creative director and the lead of the game that you're not remaking or remastering wants to do it and you don't want to do it, what is the reason? It kind of is on you at that point in many ways. Because if he says jump, as long as the parent company, authenticates it and says yes, like gives them a green light. If he says jump, like the people under him in FromSoft will be like, yeah, let's do it. And he's clearly, he said that his fellow developers, you know, his line managers and stuff like that, the people underneath him, they want to do it. You know, so it's kind of like, Sony, this is in your hands at this point, and it wouldn't take a lot to do it. And at the end of the day, if you bring it to PC, you're bringing it into that ecosystem. You know, obviously, please don't do what I think you're doing, where you bring Bloodborne to PC first and then leave the PlayStation 4 version as is. Please remaster the PS4 version at the minimum. Get that up to scratch with various options and stuff. Get that sorted, and then bring it to PC after, because that feeds into what Herman Hulst and Jim Ryan was doing, you know, back in the day, where it's bringing all these PlayStation games to PC and stuff, and hopefully having some level of osmosis to bring people over to the console and all that stuff, you know. Maybe there's a Bloodborne 2, who knows, and stuff like that. So, but yeah, and then back to what we spoke about earlier with the whole like he won't let the layoffs happen while he's there. That's fucking Chad shit, dude.
Yeah, dude.
Like straight up, like that's awesome. Again,
Can't hate a
stroking his
guy like
ego.
that.
You can't hate a guy like that. In an industry
But he
where
won't
like
add an easy mode for Elden Ring.
honestly, FromSoft are, in my opinion, from what I can tell, like they work long hours. Their company like work ethic is very harsh. And I don't know. They're not as bad as Konami. They're nowhere near as bad as Konami at all. With like blacklisting developers from other studios and stuff like that. Like they were doing around the time of 2015 and stuff like that. With the Metal Gear Solid 5 Fallout with Kojima. But FromSoft are a bunch of very dedicated working developers that like they're in the best spot right now, because as far as I'm aware, in terms of company employees, they've only got like 300 to 400 people, which is fuck all. That's like the same amount of Sony Santa Monica and stuff, like your average AAA studio size. And they are putting, like I said, they're putting out games a dime a dozen, and their consistency of quality is just unreal. It almost seems too good to be true. Like it is a series, and it is
like,
a
how
company
is it possible?
that is.
Yeah.
It genuinely is. It's like I play their games, and I'm like, how do you do this? And it must be just because like the people that work there and the company ethic and stuff, to work long hours, to put everything you possibly have as a creative and as an experienced developer into what you're creating. Like he says, he quoted what Iwata-san. He said, "People who are afraid of losing their jobs are afraid of making good things." Like it nails it, dude. Like we come back to 343 and stuff. How can you expect people like that to make like games that are fantastic when everyone around them right now and back in the day, when Microsoft did all those layoffs, all your friends and the people that you've come to like love to work with and love to spend time with, because people they become friends when they work together. I know I have with people in my workplace, in my small company. How can you expect them to come with their chin as high as a kite and love what they're doing when their friends are getting laid off? They're potentially getting laid off in the future.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's impossible.
Being anxious and nervous at all times while trying to
Yeah.
create stuff and be passionate. Yeah.
You got to appreciate like everything about like making game development, from the coding to the designing, from the texturing, everything, like the managerial positions. It's all like it has to be born from passion of wanting to do what you're doing. And more so than any, like a lot of other jobs in my opinion. This isn't, with all due respect to people that do this, but like this isn't stacking shelves on a in a supermarket. This is creating something that you have to bring from your brain and put onto either a piece of paper or into a script, into a program, into some 3D modeling software, with a fucking stylus or something. Like this is genuine shit. And yeah, it's just awesome to see this. It's awesome to see that he wants a Bloodborne remaster, a PC port, and all that stuff, And it's just awesome to see that he's standing by his employees. Like it makes me happy to support them. It makes me want to buy their games, $70 full price. I've done it. I'm there. I'm fucking supporting this team.
They could have charged more for this DLC. $40 is it?
Yeah. I'm there every time, baby. So
awesome. All right, I'm sure there's people out there who don't play From Software games who are like, okay, it's been an hour of this podcast and all I've heard is From Software. So we'll move on to another big game this year, Helldivers 2. I thought this was kind of funny. So somebody asked on Twitter, the CEO of Arrowhead, they said, can you create a story mode for co-op with epic moments and tragic scenes? And he said, not happening. Sorry, bro. That's like building an entirely new game. And for me, as someone who loves single player gaming primarily, I just think this is dumb. Like, why would you don't ask for a story mode for Helldivers 2? This game is like doing live service perfectly as like this PvE multiplayer specific thing. Like, no, you don't ask the team to go focus on adding a story mode into this. This reeks of the kind of game that if it had a story mode at launch, no one would be playing it and it'd just be sitting there on the side. Like, so I thought that was kind of funny. I thought it was a good response. One other thing from Helldivers 2, and then I'll get your thoughts, Joe. This also comes from Eurogamer. Helldivers 2 developer donates to save the children because players save the children in game 2. Arrowhead CCO and Helldivers 2 creative director Johan Pilestedt confirmed the donation after Helldivers players chose to save the trap survivors, which turned out to be thousands of sick children on Vernon Wells, rather than hunt down the raw ingredients they could use to make an MD-17 anti-tank mines on Marfark. What a weird name. Why $4,311 exactly? Well, that's because Helldivers managed to save 4,311 in-game children, which turned into a charity donation to save real-life children too. So basically, in the game, they gave players the options of saving these kids, where they'd benefit not at all. Obviously, the kids are fake, digital in-game kids, or they could go this other route and get themselves some cool new mines. And they chose to support the kids, so the Arrowhead sent $4,311 to Save the Children charity. So I thought that was pretty cool. What do you think about Helldivers 2? It's on the decline a little bit with its players, but they're still being awesome. What do you think about it? All this, Joe?
Well, I'll touch on the story mode first. It makes sense. I think I love their social media presence, dude. I love the way they're just they're nonchalant,
amazing,
and they're like so. Even
salute to the guy who said to leave bad Steam reviews who got fired. Let's have a moment of peace. No, I'm kidding.
A moment of silence. It's but yeah, it makes sense, dude. I mean, like literally, they would have to program so much more stuff. They would have to create more like NPCs, and like they would have to bring like more voice actors in. It would just be a whole other thing, a whole other side of the game potentially that would be like modular to the multiplayer side, kind of like Call of Duty does if they want to go that way. Yeah, it makes complete sense. And in all honesty, like, this is the thing. Even though it's not on the level of, like, a carefully handcrafted single-player narrative, what you get in this multiplayer is little moments of narrative. You drop in and there's chaos everywhere and people are screaming and there's this, like, Brian, there's this meta-narrative of, like, Malevelon Creek at the time back in the day. That's like, we're losing the creek. We need reinforcements. And then we lost the creek and stuff. And even though I fought so damn hard to keep that creek alive and reinforced, but we lost it, Brian. We lost it. But yeah, it's a brilliant time, dude. And I think that's what people need to realize. I mean, obviously, it was just an off the cuff tweet to him or a reply to him, rather, a reply to the developer on another conversation. And so it's obviously not like an official want or anything. And it's not something necessarily people. I've not heard a lot of people in the community of Helldivers want a single player mode necessarily. I've heard rumblings of like just people saying like, "Oh, it'd be cool if this was single player," whatever, every so often as an off the cuff comment. But I think this is not something that needs to be done. We've still got to remember that this team isn't AAA level size. They have their limitations, and one of the biggest reasons why, like you said, they know what they're doing with the live service and stuff. One of the biggest reasons why Helldivers 2 rather is so like good is because they knew their limitations and they knew what they were doing when it came to gauging fan expectations or lack thereof at the time, because obviously Helldivers 1 was very niche. And they took their time with it. They took 9 years to develop it, and don't like start, because here's the thing, right? Like if you start developing for a single player side of this game, single player portion, who's going to develop the multiplayer side? You're going to take people off unless they bring sort of internal help from other.
Doesn't really make sense.
It's a lot of annoyance that I think. Another thing is that Sony will have to get involved big time for it, because Sony will no doubt have to hire freelancers in and contractors and stuff like that to really like bolster that multiplayer side, because in all honesty, if they start to put the main team on single player stuff, it's going to need all of them. And if they do that, then they're going to have to put either the multiplayer mode on life support this early on, which is stupid. It's ridiculous.
That's where all the money's being made.
That's where all the money's being made.
All the players are.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And or they, like I said, they're going to have to bolster that with some like contractors or freelancers, or bring people in from other studios, which also has a knock-on effect to other studios doing other things, so even if you bring people in from like, I don't know, Guerrilla Games or something, it's like the Coalition did with Halo Infinite. It's like it all has a knock-on effect. So just let these teams do what they need to do, unless like something seriously needs to change, and then start bringing in other things and changing things drastically like that. But let it lie, let it sort of have its meta narrative of multiplayer and stuff, because it's so cool. In relation to the donation to Save the Children, incredible. Like we constantly talk about how gamers are just sometimes arseholes, or often arseholes, and they have no sense of touching grass, and they have no sense of relativity and perspective in anything. I mean, we were speaking earlier today in the Discord about like people on the side of like Aloy being ugly and the Fable protagonist being too ugly and stuff. Yeah, and it's just like, dude, it doesn't matter. Half the time you're gonna see the back of them anyway, so it doesn't even really matter.
And they're not even ugly.
Yeah. No, it doesn't even matter. It's just a woman. Relax. Like that goes out the window like 5 minutes into the game. Like straight up. Like the appearance of characters goes straight out the window, you know. So yeah, I think this is brilliant. It shows that there is a side of the community of gamers that are actually fucking good people, and I do think I think the majority of gamers are good. I think there are good people in the industry and in the community. It's just that there are a very loud minority that sully the product. You know, a few bad apples spoil the bunch kind of job. And all I'll say is for democracy, baby, because like this is awesome, dude. And the best part about this is that this was donated straight from Johan.
Yeah, I know. Like I noticed
his own money, dude.
Yeah,
this ain't a company thing.
Yeah, it's cool. He got his $400,000 bonus check and said, "Yeah, I can do this." No, I'm not taking away from him. It's cool. It's cool. Yeah, but no, Helldivers continues to stay winning, and I hope that. I mean, the player base numbers are always going to go down for that, but hopefully it just stays consistent, you know, and that's all it needs to be, really.
Let me have a look at the player count now, Brian.
What is it? Are you checking Steam charts?
Yeah, Steam charts, 43,000. So it's not.
Yeah, it's just
too bad.
It's just not crazy, but I mean, if it can maintain for a long time, that's great, you know.
Yeah, it's peaking and valleying through the week, you know. So like it's to be expected. But.
Cool. This next article comes from Kotaku by Kenneth Shepard. 19 things we learned from the Dragon Age The Veilguard Q&A. The creative leads behind BioWare's next big RPG gathered on Discord to answer fan questions. Man, the more and more I hear about this game, Joe, I am so stoked for this game. Stoked. So obviously it's a very long article. I'm just going to read the headlines so we can kind of talk about things we find intriguing. Having 2 party members will change things. Every previous Dragon Age game has used a party of 4 characters, including your player character, whereas the Veilguard has shaved this down to 3. You'll only be able to bring 2 companions with you at a time, similar to the Mass Effect series. And fans are worried this might affect things like party banter, which has become a staple in the series. Bush explained that lowering the party count came hand in hand with the desire to bring everything in gameplay to a more intimate level, and that means commanding more party actions all at once. We just found that when you're playing the combat system, when you're planning your strategies, 2 felt really like the right number to manage. So keep in mind, the protagonist has a lot of different types of actions, abilities, and individual attacks that are more fully fleshed out than ever before. So I think that's pretty cool, honestly. I'm glad that I think 3 is a solid number, just like it was in Mass Effect. And honestly, the vibes I'm getting from, and I could be completely wrong when this game comes out, but the vibes I'm getting from Dragon Age The Veilguard is that they really sat down and made a plan for this game and like stuck to specific goals and what it was going to be. It wasn't like it's going to try to be somewhat open world and try to be somewhat live service and try to be somewhat this and somewhat that. It seems like it's very much, no, this is linear. This is action based. This is two party members. So very cool. Touch on a couple other things. There's no photo mode in the game as of yet. The ability wheel is a bit more limited this time around. BioWare will talk about accessibility features at a later date. The Veilguard takes place 10 years after Inquisition, which is fitting because it's exactly 10 years since the last game came out. So that works. Mm-hmm. You'll be able to customize your party's outfits. The team is not focused on any DLC at this time. I love that. I love the first game I can remember doing that. I'm sure it wasn't the first game, but like I can remember back when BioShock Infinite came out. One of your favorite games, Joe. Totally joking. And they sold a season pass for the DLC for BioShock Infinite at launch. And it was over a year later, and everyone was like, where is the DLC? And Ken Levine came out and he was like, we didn't start creating any of it until the game launch because that's what people have said they wanted. And I was like, that's so cool. So I like that. There will be transmog in the game. Transmog where you can take a really good item and make it look like an item that's worse, but maybe looks cooler to you. There won't be any asexual characters this time around. I don't think I even knew that was a thing in prior games.
Oh, no.
Blood Mage will not be a specialization for your character. I don't know if that's something that people really care about or not. I guess I'm not familiar enough with Dragon Age. There will be no dog this time. There's been a dog in your party member prior, but that's kind of like whatever. BioWare will show the character creator before launch. I think that's pretty cool. They did the same thing for what was that game that came out recently? Oh, it wasn't Baldur's Gate. It was Dragon's Dogma. Let you mess with your character creator before the game came out.
Yeah.
Your main character will go by Rook as their name, but the last name will be defined by their faction. Interesting. There's up to 6 factions you can choose from. There's going to be a collector's edition for the game they'll talk about later. Tavern songs are back. Your party members can leave if you piss them off, but they might come back. I'm going to be pessimistic and say they'll come back no matter what because it's in the game design, but I could be wrong. If your this is one that could probably upset people. If your character dies at any point, it's a game over. Okay. So prior Dragon Age games, if your character dies, you could switch over to the other character. Yeah. But no, you're just dead. You got to go back to save.
Yeah.
Your decision with the Fade in Inquisition will not play a part in the Veilguard. And there won't be any mounts this time around. The game's not open world, so you won't have like a horse you can summon or whatever, which I think is good because I don't know if you saw this. This is something we didn't cover, Joe, but it came out like a week or two ago that in Inquisition, when you summon your horse to move faster across the world, your horse moves at the exact same speed as your character, but they changed the field of view so you thought you were moving quicker.
What?
Yeah. That's an actual thing.
What is wrong with Dragon Age Inquisition, dude?
Hey, no one knew. I was getting on my mount all the time so I could move faster. Turns out I was moving the exact same speed.
Dude, I don't remember that at all. They completely... Oh, that's smoke and mirrors. Wow. Yeah, my God. I'm baffled.
Yeah, dude, look it up sometime. It's
oh my God. Wow.
Yeah. Dude, like I feel like such a like a dumb placebo taking child. Like I'm just like, I gotta get to my next quest and summon my horse. And I'm just on my horse riding and it's like the same exact speed. And like wild, dude.
There's gotta be a mod for that.
But yeah, dude, is any of this like get you more excited for the game? How you feeling about Dragon Age The Veilguard now that we're a couple weeks out here from the announcement?
So like the whole having 2 part, I'm gonna kind of go through it like as you did in many ways sequentially. Because
that's fine.
I forget things, but yeah, having 2 party members, I think that's fine. In all honesty, this whole worry that like the party system's not gonna work as well and stuff, and the banter's not gonna be as good. It's like Mass Effect is right there to use as an example of how BioWare does a 2-party system, and it's like, well, why not? Like, why not use this? Yeah. I mean, like I'm noticing a trend here. Everything based on especially what you said, everything that they are doing and everything they are changing and everything they're committing to here when it comes to the various designs in the game is to promote more of a quick combat style / in and out
tighter
game rather than standing around casting spells and shit like that. So yeah, it's everything that I'm seeing, like I don't know, the ability wheel being more limited and stuff this time around, again backs that up. I also love the fact that like the Veilguard is taking place a long time after Inquisition, or enough time after Inquisition, and it also your decision at the end doesn't affect the Veilguard story and stuff. So this is like lining up to be a game that I personally would hopefully get into somewhat around launch day, if not shortly after, given like I have time to play it. Mainly because it doesn't feel like I have to know everything to get into it. And yeah, it looks great, dude. It looks
Could be
great.
The next Elden Ring. No, I'm kidding. That's
Calm down. Calm down. Oh my God,
dude! I forgot the joke. I was gonna joke during when Helldivers 2 gave all that money to the Save the Children. I was gonna say thank you, Miyazaki. Like just somehow he deserves the praise, anyways. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it looks really good, and like the art and the in-engine like sort of images they're showing and stuff look really cool, and Tavern songs being back's really cool. Because they weren't in Inquisition, right?
I don't think so.
Were they in Inquisition?
I don't think they were.
Oh no, I think they were, but like I don't know. I can't remember. It's been so long. Wes will have to correct us in the Discord for that. But yeah, it looks great, and I'm excited for it. It looks like the kind of combat I like. It'll be interesting because it will be I think it will be the title that kind of splits the fan base. I really do think this, in all honesty. I think there will be people that take to it. There'll be a new generation of Dragon Age players in many ways that take to it and love it, and then go back and go, wait, this isn't like a Veilguard at all. And it's like, well, no, not really. But in all honesty, like maybe this is needed. I don't know. I mean, if they did another Inquisition style of combat or style of gameplay or whatever, or even having the open world and stuff, would it work? This all seems logical.
See, it's interesting because my favorite Dragon Age is Inquisition, but I feel like their direction, based on what they've said and what we've seen, is better for the Veilguard, because basically what you have is you have Dragon Age Origins, which is very much this like Baldur's Gate-esque, very dedicated, tactical, turn-based type game.
It's very close to a CRPG in many ways.
Yeah, and then you had Dragon Age 2, which was like, more mainstream appeal, more action-y. People didn't really like that. So then with Inquisition, they go, let's take the fans of Origins and 2 and try to combine them, where you have like this half in, half out. And then you also have like, oh, it's open world, but not really. It's more open zone, but the zones are so huge and so populated with quests, but the quests aren't really that good. It felt like Inquisition, even though that's my favorite, it felt like Inquisition had the biggest identity problem. And where even though the Veilguard seems drastically different from what Origins is, it seems like they're just committed to, hey, this is an action-based, linear story game. That's what it is. It's offline playable. It's not live service. It's not open world. Here you go, play it. And I'm like, that, you know what? That gives me a lot of faith in the product. So
yeah, dude, I'm excited for it. I honestly think this game is going to be a 9 minimum in terms of...
It seems like, yeah, dude. I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it looks great. It looks gorgeous as well. Like
it's a day one for me, unless there's some major problem I haven't heard of yet. So
yeah, unless EA like brings back that like fucking pass thing you have to put into your console.
Oh,
yeah. Remember that? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, dude. So looks awesome. Okay. I was thinking, Joe, do you mind if we mix it up a little bit? So we have about 5 or 6 more articles we want to get into, but I would wonder if we could inject our what we've been playing and my special topic for the day now, and then we can come back to the stories. That way, that stuff gets covered for sure, because some of these stories are more important or less important than other ones. So I thought that might be cool. So Joe, why don't you kick us off then? What have you been playing since we last recorded?
Yeah, so since I last recorded, like I said at the start of the show, I've been doing, I finished The Last of Us Part 1. Got through that. Ending is just devastating and God tier and just, oh my God. I mean, I'll go on that before I get to the DLC, because there's many games that there's been many games that bring me to tears. Like, I am a crier when it comes to my video games and my movies. Like, I do let my emotions flow. Like, if anyone's seen me play God of War Ragnarok that's listened to this, they'll know.
Or Halo Infinite.
Or Halo Infinite. Shut the fuck up, Brad.
I always have to do that. The first time I saw Joe cry from a game, I came into his live stream, he was crying during Halo Infinite, his first playthrough. And now, years later, he's like, man, that's not the game I want to represent me crying.
It honestly, when you bring it up, it makes me cringe. It genuinely makes me cringe.
343 made you cry, bro.
Because no, for the wrong reason. I look at that moment and I'm like, that is not me. That is like Honeypot Joe in the zeitgeist. Like, I played that mode, that section of the game when you find the weapon and all that shit or whatever, and you go through his past with Cortana. I've been through that mode like 3 or more times after, and I'm just like deadpan. There's nothing there, dude. There's nothing there. But anyway, shut up, Brian. Shut up.
Halo Infinite's biggest fan, Joe Smalley.
No, we definitely don't want to get on that topic.
There's a video. There's like a picture of you in the 343 office of you crying. They have you held up like in a frame. Anyways,
where dreams are made. Last of Us. Anyway, better game than Halo Infinite.
It's close,
where was I with that? Anyway, you completely throw me off topic.
End of the game, you're a crier.
End of the game, I'm a crier. Yeah, there's many games I played, especially on the Sony platform, because it's just the way the narratives are on those games. I mean, it's like narrative first, narrative centric, that I like really obviously show my emotions for. God of War Ragnarok, Ghost of Tsushima, Death Stranding, stuff like that. But there's something about The Last of Us when it ends, when the credits roll, okay, and swear to me and stuff like that, and the credits roll and that theme plays, so fucking good. And it is the only game that like kind of puts a ball in my throat, but not because I'm like emotional.
Mm-hmm.
It's because I am like the amount of gravitas that the game and the narrative within 12 hours, that's all it is basically, presents to you. I think it might have been even 10 for me, because I've done it. I basically have played that game like so much that I know it like the back of my hand. And it's just like, wow, dude. Like, I sat there playing it, like just listening to the credits, like for the entire thing. And it is a gorgeous, gorgeous video game. I mean, this is the first time I've ever gone and collected every single collectible in the game. And the additions it adds to the game is so good, because it just adds the core of The Last of Us is the narrative. It's not the gameplay or the graphics or any feature set necessarily, or mechanical ingenuity or whatever, even though that stuff is really tightly refined. The core of it is the narrative. So the way they bake the collectibles into the way the narrative plays out, and how that like it's weird because it feels like the collectibles are acknowledged within the main narrative timeline itself, but they're not. Like, that's the craziest thing. They're independent, like any other game, but it's the way, like, it's just a very close monologue between like you and Joel or you and Ellie, depending on who you're playing at the time. And also sometimes when you pick up certain comics or whatever, Joel will be like, "Hey Ellie, like I found this comic for you," and it just all feels narratively consistent all the way through, from the gameplay.
Feels like it was meant to be there, and it's like part of the narrative. Like it's part of the lore. Like this happened, you know?
Yeah, because like you'll play a lot of games where like with the collectibles, with collectibles, where it's like you'll just have to go to some random place in the middle of nowhere. And Death Stranding's like that. You'll have to like, it'll tell you to like walk up to like the top of a random hill to find a memory shard, a memory stick, a data stick, and it's like, why would Sam be up here? He wouldn't. Like, he already doesn't. At the start, he begrudgingly doesn't want to do this journey. So why would he add to his journey by going over to find a USB drive with data on, and then when you get the USB data back, it's like Kojima's like sunglasses and a bio about all his sunglasses, and it's like it doesn't make any sense. Like,
wow, I can't wait to play that game.
It's wild, dude. Not to talk bad about that game because I love it, but it is true. Like, it's weird. So, but when you play things like, I mean, even God of War is like that in many ways. It's like you'll go around and you'll find like certain bits and bobs and certain like healing items and stuff, and it's just like, like health shards and stuff, and it just doesn't make sense narratively. It's kind of like, Ragnarok is nigh. Kind of got to get moving, guys. Oh no, let's go and explore this area and find different things and smash these chests open and do Norn challenges and stuff. It's like, it doesn't make sense. But anyway, yeah, The Last of Us, beat it. It's a phenomenal experience. That ending is so powerful. And the more I dig into like the collectibles and the more I like learn even more about the Fireflies and dig into their backstory, and I was digging into their wiki and stuff, the more I'm like, you guys are fucking useless. Like, honestly, as an organization, the Fireflies are just straight trash. And it's one of the reasons why, like, I mean, we'll get onto this if we ever do a Last of Us Patreon exclusive episode for the first 30 days. But they're just trash, dude. And it's one of the reasons why I don't resonate with their side at all when it comes to their decision making and stuff and how they operate. And I mean, all it took is one dude to take the entire thing down. So yeah, it's a mind-blowingly good narrative. It's a mind-blowingly good game. That ending portion when you're running out of the hospital with Ellie in your arms is just, it's just so
dude.
good.
I think that's such an interest. I love that the game asks that question and kind of poses that, puts that on the player, because so two things I'll say. When I first played The Last of Us, 2013, the year it came out, when I got to the section in the hospital, something overtook me, and I was just like, I am gonna shoot every mother effer down in here and save Ellie. Yep. Like, it didn't even occur to me really that I was gonna doom humanity. I was like, I'm saving. Yeah, exactly. So there was that angle. Well, then now there's the angle that I have a daughter.
Yep.
And dude, I don't even feel bad saying that if it came down to my daughter or humanity having to deal with a disease that left them infected and zombified for the rest of eternity, I'm letting humanity fall away to save my daughter. I'm not saying that it's the right choice. I'm just saying that is the choice I will make, and I don't need to think it through any further. That is it. And it's like, and it, I don't know. It says something about the human condition. It says something about, how much we love. I don't know. I feel like I should be able to word it better than I am, but like how much we deeply love people. Cause it's like, even if I knew like my daughter could save humanity, I'm like, no. And it's what it is. It's selfish of me, because much like Ellie, my daughter could be in a position where she's like, Dad, I want to do this. This is my life could never have any more purpose than this moment. And you're like, doesn't matter. I'm selfish and I'm not letting you do it. And he lies to her. And it's like, did he do the wrong thing? Objectively, I think he did. But like, did he do the thing that I think most of us probably would have done? Yeah. I mean, come on.
Yeah, there's no world where a father lets his daughter die like that. It doesn't work.
And it's even compounded by the fact that he didn't let his daughter die, but his daughter, his real blood daughter, did die in his arms. So it's like he's like, I'm not. That's not happening to me again. It's just not.
Yeah, and it kind of has themes of like, in many ways, like the child who is not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel the warmth of the flames. And in
Mm.
many ways,
I think I've
like
heard
the
that
way,
before.
yeah, it's an African proverb. I probably butchered it like that, but that's roughly the thing. And it basically is like, in many ways, I see Joel as that. Even though he's not the child, the world took away his world. You know, like
Mhm.
Sarah was his world. He had her when he was very young. He'd lost his wife to, I don't know whether they got divorced or she died. She passed before the outbreak or whatever. You don't really get to know about that. And like he does, he burns down the village to feel the warmth of what he once had.
Mhm.
And the
His
destruction he
humanity.
caused, his
Yeah.
humanity, and it's such a. I love how ambiguous and open and open to interpretation for the audience to truly like. I mean, this is a game that came out in what 2013. Yeah, it was 2013, wasn't it, when it came out? This is 11 years old, dude.
Yep.
And this game is the first games in its own little bubble. If it was left on its own, and even if you look at 2 now and you take away 2 completely, it's literally a game that is debated still to this day on like what Joel's decision was
Mhm.
and the Fireflies and whether they are capable and whether it was the right thing to do. And it's like I stand here and I'm like, I haven't got a kid, obviously, but I'm like, there's no world where that would happen with me. Like, there's
Mhm.
no world where like I would have like anyone I love die because of some supposed cure that they could retrofit somehow, even though it's a fungus infection and she's not technically immune. She's a carrier. It's just that she's
It
got
hasn't
the
affected her. Yeah.
it hasn't affected her because she's got the growth on her brain. So it's like the science behind it doesn't make sense at the same time, because it's like, okay, like if you want me to suspend my disbelief with it, like for me, like there's part of me that Neil Druckmann, when he made, and Bruce Straley, when they wrote and they made The Last of Us Part 1, they really kind of wanted to allude to the fact that there is more evidence scientifically that the the vaccine that they're potentially making, even though it's a fungal vaccine, which makes no fucking sense, it's rarely used even today, ever, period, because there's no use for it. The science isn't behind it. That like they wanted to lead on that like the Fireflies really don't know what they're doing, and there's like massive undertones. I mean, it's not even within the subtext. When you go through the game, they are constantly just destroyed. You have to go pretty much 3/4 away across the country to find them.
Mhm.
That every time you find them or supposedly find them, they're dead, they're gone, they're somewhere else. And
Yeah.
even when you get to them at the end, Marlene's still fucking injured in many ways and like still kind of recovering from all that shit. And she only just got across country just before you did. So it's
But
like,
yeah. But that's
so
the
when I'm
beautiful
like,
thing, though, right? Because you're kind of trying to justify further why you wouldn't give
yeah,
her up. But the
exactly.
reality is, it doesn't matter how much you justify. The fact is, you just don't want to give her up.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
You still come back to that idea that it's like tribal. It's innate tribalism in many ways to
Like
protect your
let's
own.
pretend that the Fireflies were 10,000 strong and they had
Yeah,
a whole city blocked off that was immaculate and they had the
still do it.
best facilities ever.
Yeah,
And you bring Ellie there and everything's kosher. You'd still shoot them all up to
yep,
save her.
yep. I'm
So
nuking
it
that
doesn't really
motherfucker
matter.
from orbit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
it's dude. Honestly, it's one of those things where it's like it's such a well designed narrative from start to end, and it brings so many themes of like just like even political themes and how like obviously how far someone will go for another person, like that innate tribalism and um it's just a gorgeous game. It honestly is an absolutely immaculately made game from start to
Yep.
finish, and I honestly think everyone should play it. It is a game that everyone should play, and like I said, by the end of it, I was just like, I can't even fathom how good that game is. I played this game like 4 or 5
Yeah.
times now, and it's like I still can't believe how good it is. And the remake just enhanced that level. And the thing I'll say is like the only thing I'll say like again like it's one of those things where like with Ellie, they didn't ask her like obviously she didn't know she was going to die for humanity. She wanted to be the cure, but she didn't know what that would cost her. And there was no level of like, oh, this will kill you. Like, do you want to
Mhm.
do this? And in many ways, like, it's weird because it would have been cool to see if like they asked her that question, the Fireflies, and like allowed her to present the argument to Joel and say like she was like hypothetically she was like, yeah, I want to die for this to Joel, and she tried to convince Joel, but she couldn't convince Joel, and Joel ended up doing what he did in the end anyway.
Yeah.
Um, obviously that's a whole different ending to what happened, because obviously she would have seen how the Fireflies are and how it's all right and how there isn't many of her and stuff like that. But it's just such a awesome story, and no matter how many ways you spin it, like you said, you always come back to the idea that no matter what, it's Ellie. You're always going to save Ellie, no matter what. And yeah, it's just a glorious narrative.
And even when you do get to Last of Us 2 and you see like how their relationship was hurt and how she feels towards Joel, even I still in Joel's shoes, I'm just still like, I'll still do it again. You know,
100%, yeah.
Like I even if you hate me, I'm still gonna do it.
Yeah,
you know. So
100%.
It's beautiful.
But yeah, so the ending was fantastic. It was spectacular. Like,
I've never played Left Behind, by the way. Never.
Really? Wow, dude.
Yeah.
It's like 2 hours.
I know. I've played the original Last of Us and the remake. I've never played Left Behind. Now I know the whole story, and obviously I watched the show, which incorporates it. So, but no, I never played it.
I mean, I guess it's not essential, but like, there's little things
I want
that, like,
I want to play it. I just haven't.
Yeah, 100%. So it's just awesome, and it's like the DLC just adds to it, because the way the DLC works in the Left Behind chapter is essentially like it goes back and forth between, like, there's a part in the game where Joel gets injured and you play as Ellie and you have to like she's fixing him up and trying to get medicine for him and stuff. And in this particular part, it's just before the David section in the main story, but in this particular part, before you get to where David is in the narrative, you're in a mall basically, and that sets up an ability for the writers to flash back and use that as like a retroactive, like, again, flashing back thing, where like it goes back to Ellie in the Boston QZ with her friend Riley, excuse me, and they're just having fun basically, and it's just a really cool like narrative about like girls being girls, people being like, you know, just living their life, trying to live their life despite, you know, obviously the post-apocalypse. And for the most part, the moments within the past tense is just kind of walking around and talking and like sort of engrossing yourself and immersing yourself within this like flashback scene. And then while that's happening, every so often you'll flash forward to the more serious shit, you know, finding medicine, finding supplies, you know, taking down hunters, which are these bad people, bandits, basically, hunting Ellie and Joel. And that's where your combat is for the most part. And Too Long Don't Read, essentially, like, it ends, again, spoilers here for this shit, but I mean, 11 years. Basically, in the flashback, what happens is Ellie, and this is when Ellie gets infected, she gets bitten. And Riley gets bitten as well. And essentially what happens is they end going like, shit, basically, like, I can't believe this happened. Like, we were basically just in the mall trying to like be friends and like try and sort of like work out our beef, because they have a little beef going on. Now we're both gonna
die.
And now we're gonna die. And they're just sitting there and they're just like, fuck, you know, like they're just completely baffled. And they just sit down. And Riley basically goes like, why don't we just wait it out? And what did they say? Like, why don't we just wait it out and write it out, or be all poetic and stuff? Whatever. It makes a cool little line that's really dope. I can't believe I'm forgetting it right now. But what happens essentially is like, what's cool about that moment for me in that DLC is that there's a part in the main story with the collectibles where you find a dead person in a bath, and it's in the hotel section. And Ellie goes, looks like they took the easy way out. And that is a direct reference to what Riley says about taking the easy way out. We've got one or two options. We take the easy way out, or we just sit here and go out all poetic and all that shit. And it's like, I was like, I've never experienced that before. And it's an optional conversation with Ellie in the hotel. And I was like, bro, that is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
Like,
just 2 hour add-on, and it deepens the narrative so much more and has its own little theme. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And as far as I'm aware, like, that infers that Riley shot herself. You know? And Ellie waited a bit longer in that DLC, and it was like, I'm not turning. Like, what?
There's something I never thought of. Is it possible that Riley could have maybe not been infected either? I mean, that's not something they ever touch on. Well, because Ellie obviously wasn't. Well, she was immune, is what I'm saying. Like, maybe the immunity came from that specific infected zombie. But it's irrelevant. But I was just
because it doesn't, in the game, it doesn't go into it. As far as I'm aware, in the TV show, obviously, her mother gives birth to her, and as she's giving birth to her, she gets bit, and that's what causes Ellie to be like
Oh, that's right, but that's not in the game. But yeah.
proto-effective. But in the game, it's never clear why Ellie has the brain mutation and why she's immune. Again, everything is ambiguous, and that's one of the biggest strengths of The Last of Us, and it will continue to be so. But yeah, dude, The Last of Us, it's just so good. I mean, like, I can't...
So good, yeah.
The DLC is more of the main game in many ways, so I can't really go into detail of why it's... Like, everything I say about the main game applies to the DLC.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just a must-have little extra epilogue part that everyone I think needs to play because it's nice, dude. There's like it's kids being kids, and it's just fun to see, you know. So, yeah, I don't know.
You've been playing Stalker as well, correct?
I have. Yeah, I've been playing Stalker. I don't know how long you've got for me to talk about this one, Brian.
You had a lot to say about Last of Us, but I mean, hey, go ahead and talk about Stalker, man.
That's what we're here Stalker. For anyone that doesn't know, it's basically an alternate reality, sort of post meltdown Chernobyl nuclear disaster of 1986, and you are within a zone, Chernobyl nuclear exclusion zone, essentially, or Chernobyl exclusion zone, where there are mutants and monsters and enemies and bandits, different factions all warring for different reasons. You've got like Monolith that are more attached to the zone and more of a religious cult, and you've got the army that like want to shut down the zone and stuff, and then you've got like the stalkers, which is what you are, loners, which are basically just there for various reasons, but like you're mostly there to get money or to, you know, like to maybe get revenge on people. It depends on the individual, and it's just a fantastic little it is technically an RPG, obviously, but it's mainly a shooter, but it has immersive sim elements and stuff, and it's just an absolutely brilliant game. And I'm playing the first one right now. There's three games that have come out, obviously prior to what's coming out soon, which is the second game, which is so there's Shadow of Chernobyl, which is the one I'm playing now, which is what everyone kind of prefers, who are the hardcore purists. It's the first one. Then there's Clear Sky, which had a rough launch and has loads of problems with gunplay and stuff like that, and optimization and bugs. But it is good in some areas, in other areas. And then there's Call of Pripyat, which is a bit more open, a bit more immersive sim, and just sort of like knuckles down on the mechanics more, but also doesn't do as good of a story. But essentially, I'm playing Shadow of Chernobyl, which is the first one. And it's just a fantastic game. I played this game loads of times on PC. I'm excited for the second one, cautiously optimistic. But the way this game does like immersion, it very much is like Dark Souls, Brian, where like it doesn't have music in a lot of areas, so it's just you and the ambient noise, the wind, the distant gunfire, the the mutants around you, the dogs barking, it's the anomalies making noises.
How comparable is this game to Metro?
So Metro,
because I've played Metro and beat Metro, but
so Stalker in many ways is like Metro, but it's probably more like open worldy. It's got much bigger environments. Obviously, if you're not talking about Exodus, but for 1 and 2 Metro, Last Light, and obviously Metro 2033, it's a lot more open from the get go. But also has like you can beat the game in like 5 hours if you mainline it, which it allows you to do very easily. But in many ways,
do you think if I enjoyed Metro 2033 and Last Light, that would give you a lot more hope I'd like Stalker?
I think so. What is the things you like about Metro?
I think the immersion's a huge part of it. The dark and the darkness. It's so dark and gritty and immersive. Yep. Because I enjoy shooting stuff in it, of course, but for me, it's like the wiping your helmet off and going into radioactive areas and also like the man. It's really embarrassing if I get this wrong because it's like I should know better. But like, is it like they're like Russian in the game? Is that right in Metro?
Yeah, it's Russian.
Russian. Okay, yeah. So I like the like Russian accents and stuff, like the Russian culture. So
yeah, dude. In many ways, this is the thing. Stalker, GSC game where a lot of developers went to. Is it Deep Silver that makes Metro 2033?
That sounds right. Yep.
Yeah,
I believe
Deep
that's
Silver.
Right.
Yeah. So in many ways, Stalker walked, so Metro could run. Metro is clearly higher budget, higher in fidelity, higher in just like production level. But
Exodus.
I loved it, dude. I liked Exodus. People are, I think, overly harsh on Exodus, but I thought
I've never played Exodus.
Good. Yeah, it's really good. It's very big, but you can mainline it if you want.
It's been on PlayStation sale for $5, so I should have bought it.
Yeah, it's a fun. I love that Exodus. It's probably my second favorite. I think I prefer it over Last Light. So, but yeah, Stalker's good. Like you saying all that immersive stuff, the darkness, the immersion and stuff, which is very immersive sim. So I'm surprised you said that stuff, to be honest, because obviously you're not really one to be an immersive sim gamer, right?
Yeah,
like you're
right.
You're more, right, yeah.
I love Dishonored 1, but I didn't like Prey or Dishonored 2. So.
Yeah, so I honestly, that's all Stalker. There was a moment I went down a sewer recently, and I've been down this sewer so many times. And it's like you go in, and it's like dark, and the only thing you can see and hear is like it's pitch black if you don't have your torch on. It's just this rotating emergency light that's like squeaking every time it rotates round. So good, so amazing sound design for like the environment and stuff. And then and Darren will know what I'm talking about when I say this. And then you go to the right, you take out some bandits, right? You go further in, you take out more bandits, you get further in, and then you get to like this corridor, and it's like this room is just lit by like green anomaly radioactive like areas throughout this long corridor, and it's just dark all the way down. You can't see anything, and it's like instantly like as soon as you walk in, you just hear this like this growl, and it's like this monster called a bloodsucker. And it's an invisible monster that comes running at you at full pace and just tries to kill you. And it's one of the higher level enemies in the game. And it's like, holy fucking shit, that thing is terrifying. I know what's coming every time, and I'm still like, that is fucking terrifying to me. Yeah, and these Stalker games, they're based off of a Roadside Picnic and a Russian film, which is one of my favorites, Stalker, by the same name. And it just does a lot of cool things. It changes certain things from the books. The books and the movie kind of infer that it's more about aliens. The book is called Roadside Picnic, and that's what it's kind of inferring. It's like the shit that they left in and around Chernobyl is like what we do when we have a roadside picnic. People littering, people leaving shit by the wayside and never coming back to it. That's what the aliens did in the books, and that's what like all this weird shit that's going on with monoliths and stuff like that, and like mutants and radiation and stuff. It's all from these aliens that have come and left, basically. And the game changes that massively. But essentially, like that's Stalker, and it's such a phenomenal experience. Like it's very like inventory centric. You have to manage your resources a lot. It's all about head tapping and like just really getting involved with all the nuanced mechanics of that world. And it's just an awesome RPG that can take you, like I said, 5 hours, or it can take you 20 to 30 hours. So yeah, a phenomenal time. I recommend it for everyone. But yeah,
you're getting a good dose of like you get your Last of Us and you get your Stalker, and they're very different experiences.
Yes,
so
definitely.
Cool.
What about you, Brian?
Okay, so yeah, I have a lot to say. I've been playing Nier Automata still.
Oh Lord.
Yes, so kind of cool how I got to this point, guys. So basically, one day after listening to podcasts, people talking about Stellar Blade, I go and download the Stellar Blade demo, and something about the demo hits with me really well. Like it hits really good. But I'm not sure if I'm going to buy it or not. And you guys, if you've been listening since the beginning, you'll know that I went back and forth. Did I want to buy it? Did I not? Finally, I bought it. Played Stellar Blade. Loved the game. I give it an 8 out of 10. I don't think Stellar Blade is a masterpiece. I don't think it's one of the best games you'll ever play. But I loved it. And something about the story and the setting and the narrative, I just really enjoyed. And then I find out that it's basically a game that's heavily inspired by Nier Automata. And that Nier Automata is a game heavily inspired by the anime Neon Genesis Evangelion. So because of my interest in Stellar Blade, I decided to go back and I start watching Neon Genesis Evangelion every night. And after I beat Stellar Blade, I buy Nier Automata and I play that. And I'm at this point now where, so I beat Stellar Blade, obviously, and then I finished watching all of Neon Genesis Evangelion. I've beaten Nier Automata twice, and so broad spoilers here. Like, I'm not going to get too into the nitty gritty, but broad spoilers for Nier Automata, 7-year-old game.
Yep.
The thing about Nier Automata is when you beat the game and roll credits, that is essentially only 1/3 of what the developer wants you to experience. The game is designed to be played through 3 full times, and when you beat the game the first time, it's like 12 to 15 hours, the credits roll, and then you're supposed to continue on your save file, and it starts the game back up again as a different character. And for the second playthrough, it's basically the same exact game you just played, but you're playing with a different character, and there's a couple different scenes added in. But more or less, you're playing the full 12 to 15 hour experience all over again, just as you did the first time, with very little difference at all, just like replaying the game. And then you get, once you do that and you roll credits the second time, a third playthrough starts that is considerably different, and you play as a different character again. And that is like kind of the actual conclusion of the game. That is kind of beating it once, even though you can beat it once and get credits and it counts as like beating the game. Really, to officially beat it, you're playing it 3 times in a row. It's very different in that style. You know, I know the Dragon Guard games, which take place in the same universe as Nier, have done that. The first Nier game from 2010 also had multiple playthroughs to get multiple endings. So that is part of the experience, is playing through it multiple times. I am one of those people that replays games like crazy. I have championed replaying games more than I have new games. I've played games like Halo 30, 40, 50 times. I've played Zelda's 20, 30, 40 times. I've replayed lots of games, Gears and Final Fantasy, over and over and over again. So replaying the same exact thing is not necessarily my issue. And even replaying the same exact thing right after beating it is not an issue. I played Resident Evil 4 twice in a row. And so going into Nier Automata, my expectations have been that I am about to play one of the greatest video games ever made, because people say that it's one of the greatest video games ever made. It is, on Wikipedia, it cites it as being known as one of the best video games ever made. A lot of people have it in their top 5, number 1. So I go into this game with very high expectations. It's a game developed by Platinum Games, a great studio. And my first playthrough of Nier Automata, I really loved it. It continues to change its genres up a little bit, where it's like, oh, you're doing like a space shooting thing, and then you're doing like a side-scrolling thing, and then you're doing like a little hacking mini game, and then most of the game is like third-person combat, type game. And I loved the setting, and I loved the world and the characters, and I really had a fun time playing through it. And I beat the first playthrough, and I really enjoyed it. And I think I said on this show, I was like, if I just went off of giving it a score off of one playthrough, I'd give it an 8 out of 10. That's how I feel. I think I told Joe, I was like, oh, maybe after I beat all 3 playthroughs, it'll be like a 9 out of 10 for me.
Yep.
Well, now I have beaten the game a second playthrough, which is the playthrough that's very similar to the first. And I've gotten really fatigued playing the game. And like I said, it's more or less the same game again the second time, with little difference. And I don't know if it's simply because I've played it again back to back, and I know I have a third time coming that's making me feel that way, or it's what I really feel what it is. And it could be wrong. I'm just kind of expressing my thoughts here, is that the world of Nier Automata, like the world is in like lore wise, I think is awesome. Yeah. And the game's fun to play as well, but like the level design for Nier Automata, I don't feel like is that high of quality. It's not that it's bad, but it's nothing to write home about. It feels very mid 2000s. There's invisible walls everywhere. There's weird kind of convoluted ways to get around, where it's like, oh, you're here and you need to get over here. Well, you got to go down a manhole to get to that place. And I'm like, okay, I don't know. So like, I feel like the level design isn't that grand, and then the combat's great, but it's not like Souls great.
Yeah.
The music's phenomenal. The characters are cool. And the world has this like purposeful kind of bland look to it, which I do kind of like, because it's got this blandness of like, oh, things have been destroyed and dilapidated, but it's also very bland. So it's like, after I've played through the entire game twice, and I don't feel like the level design is that incredible, things are pretty bland, lots of invisible walls. The combat hasn't really deepened to me on a second playthrough. I'm just kind of feeling fatigued and like I'm done with it. But I know I need to play the third playthrough, which is the one that's so much different. But I've already started to play it. I'm like 10 minutes in, which is granted nothing, but I'm still in that same level, that same open world level design. And I'm like, I know I'm really feeling it. And even though I like the characters and I like the story and I'm having fun with the game, I kind of feel like I like Stellar Blade more, which is like heresy to people, because Stellar Blade is more like oh, that's an 8 out of 10, good game, nothing special, where Nier Automata is like one of the greatest games ever made, 10 out of 10. But right now I'm just feeling the fatigue of playing it. It's hard for me to want to finish the third playthrough because I just feel over the game. I also want to play Shadow of the Erdtree. So I don't know. how many people out there feel the same way about this game. Of course, the way the internet talks about it, it seems like no one does. But
Yeah.
I really do think it's a great game. I would recommend it to anyone. I'm glad I bought it. Like I said, I'm still at an 8 out of 10, but I don't know. Even if I played through the third story and it was awesome, I feel like I'd have to detract from it for making me play 15 hours of the second playthrough, which was very, very much the same thing all over again. So I don't know, Joe. I'm having a great time with it. I'm ready to move on to something new. I know it's been a long time since you played Nier Automata, but from your memory, you didn't have any of these negative experiences I had, it sounds like, right? It was just a full awesome playthrough, right?
Well, I remember it came out in 2017, right? Which I think was a pretty slow year for me because that was like around the time I had like the PlayStation 4 and like I don't know if I think I actually played it on the Xbox One, believe it or not, even though I had a PS4.
Yeah, that's on there. Okay.
Yeah, I played it on the Xbox One, and the thing with it is like it was quite a slow year just in general because it was just predating when like Sony was going to kick up with like Spider-Man and get God of War. And
2018
in many ways,
is a
like,
big year.
Yeah, and in many ways, like that was the year where like I think the 8th generation flourished. You know, showed like sort of sprouted and just cracked open that like chrysalis and grew wings like a butterfly and went crazy because it was like holy shit, 2018 is a crazy year because not only did we have those, we had like Red Dead Redemption 2 and stuff. So it was a big year, dude, and. So I think Nier for me, because I played it in 2017 before that stuff started happening, obviously we'd had Horizon by that point, which I never cared about anyway. It kind of felt...
Breath of the Wild was out.
Yeah. And obviously I'm not a Nintendo guy, so Nier kind of didn't feel as dated to me as it does for you. But I do resonate with the like walled off secular nature that it has. And it does feel old school in that. It's really weird because like Nier Automata has like some incredibly like unique game designs, like, you know, with all the hacking like mini games that play and they are consistent with the controls that you've played with all the way through and stuff like that. Like that stuff is genuine. Like that's like 9th generation, 10th generation console level like design because that shit wasn't in gaming until then, you know, in many ways, as far as I could tell anyway, at the time when I played it. I don't know if the previous Nier did anything like that at all because I've not played it. And I think how long did it take you to beat like each playthrough? Because for me, it was like 20 hours ish, something like that. And
and to be fair, and I'm not trying to hide this at all, but like I didn't do the side quests because I don't usually do side quests in game. But I think it took me like, I mean, the first playthrough was probably closer to 15. The second one might have been closer to 10 hours. So I probably put 25 to 30 hours in the game to play it twice.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's one of those things where like everything you say, I don't really have much of a talking point because one, it's very fuzzy because again, I mean, what's that like? That's 7 years ago now. That's crazy.
Have you ever had a desire to go back to it? It's been 7 years.
I mean, not really. In all honesty, it made such a lasting impact on me at the time that now it's kind of like, I don't really want to like go back, especially now that you're saying what you're saying because it's like maybe I won't look at it as fondly, and I kind of want to let that exist within its own little bubble.
I get that.
But I mean, it's interesting because like when it came out, Nier Automata, it actually came out to like favorable reviews. It came out to like 8s and some 9s, but mostly 8s and 7s.
It feels like an 8 game to me.
Yeah. And I think what's happened is I think the people that love it are just so vocally out there. You know, they're so outspoken with their love for the game, and I think that inflates the cultural relevancy of it potentially and the critical. Like people then think, oh, mate, well, clearly it was a 9, 10 out of 10 game or stuff. But I mean, you've enjoyed your time with it though, right? Like I
have. I'm glad I bought it. I would say so. Like me and Joe and a lot of people in our community, we like to do like a top 50 games list. This doesn't make my top 50, but like for all my criticisms, like it probably makes my top 75. Like, I know that's not the most glowing criticism or glowing praise in the world. Like, top 75, big deal. But like, I mean, of all the games I've ever played in my life, like it's a great game. I'm glad I bought it. I'd recommend it to people. And also like some of the things I complained about, I also am a little fond about. Like, I love that this 2017 game reminds me of a Shadow of the Colossus, Twilight Princess 2005 like level design. Like the world reminds me of those like bland kind of, invisible wall type.
Yeah.
And it throws me back and I like that, And And like, and if I'm comparing it to like Stellar Blade, which is like a new release game, Stellar Blade has way better combat, way better graphics. I think way better level design, but like Stellar Blade's characters, pretty superficial. They don't have the depth of like a 2B9S.
No.
The story isn't deeply resonant in Stellar Blade. It's much more surface level, whereas like there's layers more to Nier. So like I get how awesome Nier is. And like also for fans of Neon Genesis Evangelion, like if you can look up like websites and like Google search and stuff, people will be like, what is the best game to play if you like Neon Genesis Evangelion? The number one pick is always Nier Automata. And there's also like a dozen Neon Genesis Evangelion games, and people put Nier Automata above those because it's more like them and better. You know, so like I know when I say I only have good things to say, it's like, well, Brian, but you said negative things. I'm like, yeah, but they're like, you know, they're fair criticisms and little nitpicks amongst a great experience. But like, I feel myself wanting to walk away at my 2 playthroughs, and I also feel like I would have enjoyed. I think I would have the game higher. This is what really sucks, dude. I feel like the game might have made it in my top 50 if I quit the first playthrough and then just replayed it again a year later. You know what I mean? Like, because when I finished the first playthrough, I was like, damn, dude, that game was freaking good. Like, wow. But now I played it again, I'm like, ugh, right? Too much. Yeah.
You've looked at what happens at the end.
Yeah, and that's the thing, guys. Yeah, for those you listen, I know what happens at the end of Route C, the third playthrough, and for the sake of it, also, I know what happens at the end of Route D and E.
Yeah.
So I know all this stuff, and I know. So even knowing that stuff, it doesn't compel me to play it again. I'm kind of like, I just want to quit. You know.
So I would honestly say, if you already know what's gonna happen, you're not waiting for that bombshell. And like your experience is seemingly just going down and down and down.
It's degrading,
just walk. I would say walk away because you already kind of know.
Yeah, that's fair. And that's a good point. The only thing is, I've looked this up a lot online, and a lot of people say, yeah, it was degrading for me too on my second playthrough because it's basically the same game. But the third playthrough is what really sold it to me because the third play, like, okay, well, once again, I don't know how well you remember, Joe, but like, how well do you remember, like? Because I started the third playthrough, and I've only played 10 minutes, and it starts up as you playing as 9S in the same open world area. So I'm like, it doesn't feel that much different. In your mind, is it like wildly different? The third playthrough?
From what I remember, I think so.
Yeah.
I have such pockets of like running around of 9S, and then also like the ending is just massively like of Route C. Like just like there. That's front and center of all my mind. I remember a lot of Route A, but I don't remember a lot of Route 2, Route B and C until
the final
end.
route you play is 2A, which is like 2B with no blindfold and like different suit. Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those things where like I know from what I somewhat remember like how good Route C is.
Yeah.
If honestly, the things that you're having issues with, in my opinion, aren't necessarily things that pertain to 1 or 2 different playthroughs. There's still things that are like present in Route C. Do you know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? So I'm like
the level and all that level design and stuff like that.
Yeah, the level design and the dated style of it and stuff.
But that's the thing is I found those things fun in the first playthrough. It's really the second playthrough where it's grading. So I'm not trying to like throw you off either. It's just
it's a really hard game to critique because like it has it's very unorthodox. It's one of the most unorthodox games I've ever played.
It is.
So
but that's what makes me sad though, is like, and maybe this is a hot take, but like the first playthrough felt very satisfying and fulfilling to me. It had an ending that resonated with me. So it's like I could have walked away from it and just been like, man, Nier Automata, guys, one of the best games. But instead I forced myself to play through a second time, and now it's on the third time. I'm like, oh my gosh.
You think it's like overcomplicated a little bit potentially?
Yeah, because I mean, even like I said, I know what happens in the third. Yeah. Like, okay, here's another thing I didn't mention. Here's a criticism I didn't mention at all either. And maybe it's because I played Stellar Blade first.
Right.
This game feels really heavy-handed with its themes. It does not feel like it's playing it close to the chest.
Yeah, there's no subtext.
No, and and also like there's a lot of subtext with Neon Genesis Evangelion as well. But like this, like, dude, I'm running around in Nier Automata, and my companion is like, don't listen to the machines. They can't feel, right? And I'm like, bro, come on, dude.
I think
yeah,
you know what I think
they're
that is.
trying too hard.
I think that's the localization coming into it, like the translation from Japanese to English. I think that's what that is.
Maybe
I
it
genuinely
is.
do. Just the way they deliver it and stuff. It's
Because that's like, for instance, have you ever seen the movie Ex Machina?
That's the one with Alicia Vikander in, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
I've not seen it. No, I want to.
Okay. Well, I mean, and it's
Go ahead
I
and
won't
spoil
go
it if
through
you want.
Well, and it's not really a spoiler because if you've seen the front cover of the movie, I mean, it's the premise, right? But basically, a guy is sent to like interact with this AI girl.
Yeah.
And basically, it makes you as the viewer like so. She tricks the guy into feeling compassion for her and trying to help her escape. She's just an AI. She's just a robot. She's not a real person. Of course, it's played by a real actress. It looks like a real person. Also, it's a man and she's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
But she tricks the main character, but she also tricks the viewer into falling for her and like feeling bad for her being like caged up because she feels like a real person.
Yes.
You know, but the thing is like that works so well for the movie because it happens so naturally that I, as a viewer, am starting to feel bad for her. But when I'm playing like Nier Automata, it's like, oh man, we attack these machines and they say that they're scared and they say that they're running away from us. They don't have feelings to be.
Yeah.
Don't think that they have feelings because they don't. And it's like, bro, I get what you're doing. Obviously they have feelings. And it's like, if we're androids and we're not even human, like why should we attack these machines that feel? I get it. It's too heavy handed. Like even like Blade Runner, you know, people who've seen Blade Runner is very meta or very like deep to where it's like when Blade Runner ends, if you might the first time you watch Blade Runner and you might not even understand what the point of it was, but Blade Runner asked the question. Yeah, Blade Runner, like the real question of Blade Runner is like, okay, well, what does it take to make a human? And if everything about the thing that's not a human is not only exactly like the thing that is a human, but maybe even more so, what makes you human? And also, it asks the question at the end of the movie: is the main character you were following, who you thought was human, are they even human?
Yeah, there's
so it's
so
like,
many ways.
What does it even matter? And I just feel like I've seen that done in Blade Runner and Stellar Blade and Neon Genesis Evangelion, and it's like. Nier Automata, even though I would say from a like original, like having original ideas and being like a neat game, Nier Automata probably does it way better than Stellar Blade. It's like I've seen this done so many times and it just seems so heavy handed. So I'm just like, I don't know. Great game though. Fair. It's just I'll be interested to see if I come back next week and it's like I don't know what I'll do. Maybe I'll put it down and just play Shadow of the Erdtree. Maybe I'll play through the third part. But it'll be interesting to come back later and say, yeah, Joe, you know, I beat the third part and this game is a 10 out of 10. Holy shit, it changed my life. Yeah. Or maybe I beat it and I'm like, it was too much. I'm still at an 8. Or I don't play it at all and just go on to Shadow of the Erdtree. So that's where I'm at. Yeah.
That's fair.
Interesting shit. But you know what, Joe? So we do have a bunch more news articles, but I want to get into my special question, which I know we're going long here, and we'll see where this ends up, guys. I think this is just kind of fun, flying by the seat of our pants. But my question for today is, what do you think Sony's next generation PlayStation looks like? And let me kind of set you up for this.
As in physically?
More their plan, but you can also speculate on it physically, right? So for me, if you guys are anything like me out there, I feel like the PS5 generations just got started. Like obviously it's been around for about 4 years.
Yeah, me too. But
for me, because of all the cross-gen titles and us like really just starting to gain momentum, I would personally love 4 to 5 more years of this generation. I say let's just stick with it. Like we haven't even experienced what this thing can do. Let's get it so there's no more cross-gen. Yeah. I'm not ready at all. But heavy rumors, heavy speculation is saying Microsoft, probably due to their position in the industry, are going to force us into the next generation quicker.
Yes.
Maybe as early as 2026, which is only 2 years away. Maybe it'll be something like 2027, which is not as bad. 2028, which is 2028 is probably normal, but like sounds like maybe as early as like 2026. There's a lot of rumors floating around for what the next Xbox console is going to be. Is it going to be is there going to be like one that's a handheld SKU like the Switch, like the Steam Deck, and then another that's like a console in your living room? Is it going to be heavily like reliant on cloud to give it power? You know, lots of questions for what Xbox is going to do. But
yeah,
what we can say for certain is that Xbox, more than anyone, needs to change things up, because sticking to the status quo is not working for them. They can't just put out a console that's as powerful or more powerful than PlayStation's and put some games on it and hope to sell anywhere near the amount of consoles, because they've just been left in the dust. Sony sells 3 consoles to every one console they sell. People are dedicated to that ecosystem. And then everyone's buying a Switch because it's a different ecosystem altogether. People want to have a Switch and a PlayStation, but nobody really feels they need an Xbox.
Yep.
So they're investing heavy in Game Pass. They have all these studios, from Activision, Blizzard, Bethesda. So they're going to do something wild and crazy and different, probably. But what should PlayStation do, and what will PlayStation do, is kind of my question, because I think what I would want and what I normally would expect is for them to just do, here's PS6. It's like the PS5 and it's like the PS4, except it's way more powerful. Here's a couple new little bibs and bobs features like the DualSense. It plays all your PS5 and PS4 games. It's $500, $600. Here you go. That's the next generation. That's what I would normally expect. That's what I would normally want. But I do think, because things are changing so drastically with the success of the Switch, the introduction of the Steam Deck, Microsoft buying up all these studios, we're talking about handheld gaming, we're talking about Game Pass.
Yep.
The biggest third-party publisher on PlayStation is Microsoft now. Does Sony do anything different? What does the PS6 look like to you, Joe? What do you think they'll do? Will they stick to high? Also, it's another thing I didn't mention. Budgets for Sony's big sellers, their AAA games that sell their consoles, God of War, Spider-Man, $250, $300 million. The costs are rising. They need to sell more copies to be able to make a giant risk like that worth it. They're bringing their games to PC. To a lesser extent, this might not be reflective of anything. Horizon Lego Adventure is going to be on Switch. Sony's experimenting with putting their games other places to make up for how expensive they are. Do you see the next generation of Sony looking wildly different, Joe, both in hardware, software, handheld, no handheld? Are they going to make cheaper games? Are they going to shift into more live service? Are they going to stick with their big single player? I'll just pass it over to you. I've introduced a lot of speculation there. What do you think the next generation of PlayStation looks like? And just take it away, Joe. What do you think? I don't know, man.
I think it's really hard to decide, in all honesty, because it's not based on what PlayStation does. It's based on what Microsoft does. That's literally where the book stops. It stops at Microsoft, and it will continue to stop at Microsoft, because they are the ones shaking up the industry and making their news everyone's news by design.
Yeah, they are.
Osmosis. We constantly bring them up on this podcast, simply because, well, they bleed into everything we talk about here. And even though we don't, like, this is the thing, like, it's like, we're always talking about Xbox, and it's like, I mean, our first podcast episode was had pictures of Xbox mascots on the thumbnail.
Are they coming to PlayStation?
Are they coming to PlayStation? And that was our first PlayStation episode, and it was like, dude, what the fuck? But yeah, it's hard. It's very hard. One thing I will say is, like, I think the ballooning of costs is a big one, because I think with the failure of the Jim Ryan era massively, I mean, I say failure loosely in the sense that a lot of failed projects.
Yeah, but not really. Yeah.
Yeah, and
I can actually let me interject here, just because I'm going to throw this article in there because it applies directly to what you said. So hold your thought. Yep. Let me pull up this article. It is which one is it? Oh, here we go. Jason Schreier on PlayStation. This comes from Jason Schreier. Later this year, PlayStation will publish 2 marquee titles: Astrobot, a colorful platformer, and Lego Horizon Adventures, an adaptation of the sci-fi Horizon series that transforms the robot dinosaurs into Lego constructions. Astrobot will be exclusive to PlayStation 5, while Lego Horizon Adventures will also come to PCs and to the Nintendo Switch. It's a stark contrast from previous holiday seasons, during which the console manufacturer typically spends hundreds of millions of dollars on big exclusives such as Spider-Man and Ghost of Tsushima that tell adult-focused stories. But with some major titles delayed and fewer projects in the pipeline due to a pivot to live service games that went awry, PlayStation will look to bolster holiday console sales by reaching a new audience. The PlayStation 5, released in 2020, has so far sold 54 million units. So basically, to go off of what Joe's saying, is the Jim Ryan era put a heavy emphasis on live service titles. We know that Naughty Dog was working on a Last of Us live service game that seemed to be pretty far in development and then got canned because a myriad of things, one of which being Bungie coming and saying this isn't really going to work for you guys, and then Naughty Dog saying, well, I guess we don't want to do a live service title because we've decided that to do that would be to focus on it and support it long after it launches, and that would keep us from being able to do single player games. So a slate of live service games and projects have kind of either been canceled or put on the back burner, leading to Sony not having a strong lineup of first party titles that they usually do, which are like single player, heavy narrative driven games that cost $200 to $300 million. Last of Us, God of War, Spider-Man, Horizon. And it's led to them also making a lot of second party deals to fill out their roster. This year, we've seen Helldivers 2, not owned by Sony. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, not owned by Sony. Stellar Blade, not owned by Sony. Rise of Ronin, not owned by Sony. We have Silent Hill 2 coming this year, not owned by Sony, but all marketed within that house, right? And then also the only two big games from Sony themselves actually coming is Astrobot and Lego Horizon Adventures, which, is just a completely different. That's not a big AAA, like that's a platformer, like family fun type thing. So what Joe was saying is that, to some extent, the Jim Ryan service era kind of was a fail, but at the same time, Sony really exceeded and sold a ton of PS5s through the pandemic. But continue what you were saying and speculate on that all you want.
But is that inertia? That's the question. Is that just inertia
from the PS4 generation?
The PS4 generation, and because I love my PS5. I love it to death, but ultimately, it does very much feel like an upgraded PS4. It feels like a PS4
Pro 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Hang on. So it's like, my answer to your question is honestly if PlayStation continues to do this sort of, we're preparing, and who knows, this might go on for longer than a year. We might see this bleed into next year because they are so confident in their quarterly hardware sales, and just in general their game sales that obviously they bring in from Stellar Blade and stuff like that, and obviously internally Hellblade 2 and all that. It's like they're so confident in it. Why not just keep trying to ride this high? But at the same time, the problem is if Microsoft push the time to basically showcase and put out your next generation platforms, you might either get two situations. You might get one situation where Xbox goes and does their 10th generation first, which I don't think is going to happen, but they could do their 10th generation first, and then PlayStation 5 come out much later because they don't feel like their hand should be forced.
Like the PS3 came out 1 year later than the 360.
Exactly. Yeah. Or even more contemporaneously, look at Nintendo. They do what they want. And they might start looking at Xbox as, yes, a competitor, but more so akin to how they look at Nintendo, in the sense that clearly Microsoft are basically just doing whatever the fuck they want, and they're becoming very much more of an embracer type and a third party publisher than they are becoming a platform holder in many ways. And maybe they start to look at them like that. The second option is that Microsoft push the offensive so hard for the 10th generation, whenever that might be, with their new consoles, and they do certain things with their games to make them day and date for Game Pass, and all that shit, really lock it in, lock it down, etc., that what happens is the PlayStation equivalent is basically just oh yeah, we're still riding the high of basically all these studios we've brought in that aren't exactly heavy hitters anymore. I mean, you look at Stellar Blade, it's it's sold well, it's sold really, really good. Same with Rise of Ronin, it's on track to do better than Neo and stuff like that. But ultimately, they're not pushing numbers like a God of War, like Spider-Man, like a Horizon is for Sony. But there's a benefit to that as well, because these games aren't costing Sony as much as those games are. They're not. They don't have to monitor them as they don't have to put nowhere near as much scrutiny on them. They don't have to. Less risk, and Stellar Blade is apparently probably 50 to $85 million just to make, which is fuck all compared to God of War Ragnarok and The Last of Us Part 2 and stuff like that. And I do genuinely think, from a game standpoint, they're obviously going to carry on this live service thing. They're going to try and have these little tidbits of live service. They're going to, now that, like, this is the thing as well, I'm going to bring in Final Shape here. Now that Final Shape has done pretty fucking well, critically, this is, despite the server issues, Bungie have kind of done a good job when it comes to like this DLC and keeping themselves afloat. So you've got Bungie here showcasing that with the future, that which will be Marathon, that they are able to keep things going and keep that train moving through the stations for that dedicated first-party shooter that's going on, which is a side of the industry for PlayStation that they've lacked on for a long time since Killzone. Even during Killzone, they were lacking comparatively to Halo and stuff. So I ultimately think my answer to your question, Brian, is that it is entirely dependent on how Microsoft monetize various points of their business when it comes to their consoles, when it comes to where they put their games, and what emphasis they place going forward, whether they stick with Game Pass massively or whether they go a more traditional route now that they are a third-party publisher to maybe stick it to PlayStation a little bit. The recent showcase to me shows, with the lack of exclusive and all this stuff, that Microsoft are potentially shifting in direction. You know, I don't necessarily agree with how they've done it, but that isn't for me to decide, and that isn't necessarily for me to judge to an extent. But ultimately, it's the way they're going. And I think they are regressing in the way that they showcase and put out their products to a time of the 7th generation and 6th when they were King Dick, essentially. So I don't, just like last episode's question, I don't really have a definitive answer for you because it's such a hard thing to answer in many ways.
Yeah.
I do think we're going to start getting more gaps between these large games, these Naughty Dogs, these Sony Santa Monica's, these.
Yeah.
It's just, in many ways, like I talk about Game Pass not being sufficient and not being profitable. At this rate, if things don't start selling 15, 20 to 25 million copies per installment, you're potentially not looking at a good return on investment for even things like God of War and stuff. And I think that's why it's important in general to like balance your franchisation with branching off and doing new things. You know, I talk about Sony Santa Monica doing God of War. How long before we have another Ascension where it completely falls through and you've got 200 million just laying in the bin that they can't get back, or 300 million at that point on the PS6 generation? You have to be able to gauge your creative's interest proportionately to your return on investment, because if you do not pay attention to how your creatives are doing, they will not make games that will be proficient in what it's doing, essentially. And Sony have to be careful because ultimately they don't have as much resources to fuck about with as Microsoft. They'd have nowhere near.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, Microsoft has only just been overtaken as the most richest company in the world by Nvidia as of recent. Only just.
Yeah, Microsoft has bottomless pockets when it comes to spending on Xbox.
Yep.
You know, I think if I had to make an educated guess on what the PlayStation 6 will look like, I think it'll be a standard powerful console. I think there'll be no disk drive. They'll have a option to buy some kind of cable connected disk drive for people who really want that, but there'll be no version of the console with a disk drive. I think it'll be, you know, obviously just a very much more powerful than the PS5 to go toe to toe with whatever Xbox has. And then I do think they're going to offer some dedicated handheld option. I don't know if it'll be a companion to the PS6 or if it'll be a separate thing like a Vita, obviously done much better marketing and support wise,
or a port.
But I feel like the Switch and the Steam Deck and now the, like, you know, the handhelds from like ROG Ally, Razer.
Yes.
I think it's made a clear statement that Sony and Microsoft have to be in the handheld space to some degree, not just cloud gaming on your phone like Microsoft's always talked about, like dedicated device. I don't know what it needs to be, but they have to be there in some fashion. So I do think that Sony will have some kind of handheld with their next console. Like I said, I don't know how much it'll be integrated with the PS6 itself. Like I said, I don't think there'll be any disk drive, but I do think they'll try to go for more of what's working for them with sticking with a typical console. Because, I mean, even like you said, without them having the big games to support it, they're still selling consoles just as good as the PS4 that came
Yep.
before. So I do think Sony will try to kind of stick with what's working and let Microsoft flail about, especially since Microsoft is constantly changing things and talking, and Sony's just like never talking and just sitting there doing the same thing.
Yeah.
But what'll be interesting is if we get to a point, whether it's 1 year from now or 7, where Microsoft's really turned the tide and Microsoft is doing really well, like making decisions that are just really like kicking ass for them. Is Sony going to be in a place where they can meet Microsoft on those terms, or are they going to be so far behind doing their own thing? Because I think what Sony never wants to become, even if they're more successful than ever, I don't think Sony would ever be satisfied becoming a Nintendo where their product is the niche that you get on the side. Like, they don't want to see a future where, oh, everyone's playing an Xbox or a Microsoft gaming, whether that's a console or an app or whatever.
Yeah.
But then you have your PS5 on the side for your PS5 games and your Nintendo on the side for your Nintendo games. Nintendo was more than happy to step aside and go, we're going to be our own niche that's very successful. I don't think Sony would be happy with that. So it's going to be, can they adapt to what Microsoft does? And it's going to suck for them knowing, like, think how much it sucks. I can't feel bad for a giant corporation because they're all, scheming in their own ways. But like, it's got to feel bad being Sony and being like, yeah, we created the most kick-ass console in games, and we have just nailed it and just made a great place. But oh man, we have to contend with Microsoft, who has just sucked balls for 10 years. Simply because they have endless amounts of cash. Yeah. Like we have to adapt to Microsoft, the huge losers.
Yeah.
By a massive amount, they're the huge losers. They don't got the games, they don't got the console sales, but we still have to react to them and play into them because their checkbook is bottomless, and this sucks so much being Sony and knowing that. And you got to be careful because like you already said, Joe, like PlayStation could maybe make 2, maybe 3 major fuck ups before they're going under. And that's what I'm saying, major. I'm not saying like God of War underperforms. I'm saying like, they put out a PS6 and it sells not even half of what the Xbox sells. Like they could endure that once, maybe twice. I don't think 3 times, but maybe, but probably not. And they're done. Yeah. Microsoft could endure literally 10 lifetimes of failure on Xbox. Yeah. It doesn't matter, So that's what I have to say about it. But
it's absolutely wild, dude. And I come back to that idea of like, I don't know how. Like I've never truly met someone who is like. I mean, like I say, like I'm a fan of PlayStation, but what I really mean is I'm a fan of the games. But I would really like for someone like Xbox wise to come onto this podcast like a fanboy, like a true like flying the green flag dude who like is enamored with the green. And I mean like they're on Twitter every day and they're constantly replying to people and they're fighting the good fight that they think is good and all this stuff. I would love for someone like that to come onto the podcast and we have a conversation in general that relates constantly back to Xbox versus PlayStation in some way or shape or form, where we can have a conversation ultimately that is, and I say this a lot, you would have noticed it, is what does it mean to be an Xbox fan?
Mm-hmm.
Because out of all of the grifting that goes on when it comes to like people on Twitter and going back and forth and, the fanboyism and everything, like I know what it means to be a PlayStation fan because I'm there. Yeah. Like, and again, I say that very lightly because I'm not going to sit here and take their shit at the same time. Like, if they start fucking with things, I'm done. I'll go to my PC. See you later. But I've never met someone who's like me or even more so Xbox, like a more so fan of their platform than I am of PlayStation on the opposite side. And I'm just fascinated to like know and understand that side of it because I've got a Series S. I'm in somewhat of a sibling ecosystem to the Xbox when it comes to PC and Steam, and I've had Game Pass on the PC before and stuff, and I buy Xbox games every so often. I played Starfield, stuff like that. But ultimately, like, I don't know what like being an Xbox fan means right now, other than what people just tell me that they like Game Pass and there's a couple of games on there that seems cool.
Okay, yeah, and I think, I mean, obviously, no,
And
I would go ahead.
So to counter that, I would say like, okay, well, you might say, well, that's what you think of PlayStation, right? It's like, no, like when I talk about PlayStation, I think of the legacy, I think of the iconography, I think of, and this bleeds somewhat into like being a fanboy, but like it's not to the point where I act on it like a ravenous Twitter person, but it's like I think of the studios that I've grown attached to in some way, in sort of parasocial relationship, but not that far, in the sense that like I know a Corey Barlog, I know a Eric Williams, I know a Neil Druckmann, and I know I'm not saying this doesn't happen on Bethesda side, because I'm literally about to bring them up. I'm not saying that doesn't happen on the Xbox side, because you've got Bethesda there now. You've got what's the guy's name that like does Gears 4 and 5 under
well, it was
Coalition?
Rod Ferguson, but he's not there
him.
anymore. Yeah,
he's not there anymore. I know, because like obviously he has a very different vision for what Gears should be, as opposed to Cliff. But yeah, and I know that's the case. But for me, I just feel like as an Xbox fan, from the outside looking in, again, like I'm trying to not be like judgmental, because I'm nowhere, like I'm not more superior to any Xbox fan. Like I'm not that far gone when it comes to my fandom of PlayStation, if you want to call it that. But I just love to hear it from the horse's mouth in terms of what they root for on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
And what keeps them on that platform.
Yeah, so. No, I would love to hear that as well, and obviously that would go a lot further than myself. But as someone who I think we both agree that like I am more recently much closer to Xbox than you are,
100%.
And for me, what Xbox always was at its core, for me, I mean, this is going to be for everyone, is it was Halo and Gears of War.
Yeah,
and like that's. On one hand, that could sound like a diss because I'm like, oh, it's 2 games. But on the other hand, it was like, to me, Halo and Gears of War were such mind-blowing experiences in gaming that it didn't even matter what the competition had. Like if the competition had 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 exclusive franchises, it didn't matter, because Halo and Gears specifically were such amazing exclusive franchises. So
they were for me.
Yeah, and that's what bought me through the Xbox One. Like it was literally just, I'm gonna get more Gears and I'm gonna get more Halo. Now, I think you could make, even though to me at this point they're so close it doesn't matter anymore. But I think you can make an argument that part of Xbox for you is the controller, for sure. I think at this point PlayStation's controller has gotten so much better that they're within a close enough range. It's not as big of a deal. But I'll allow that. Like, yeah, the controller, that's fair. So Gears.
Well,
Halo,
shout out to Wes. Wes was talking about it the other day. He's been playing on the DualSense for a long time now, because obviously he's just picked up his PS5, and basically it's like a whole new world to him. Like he's starry-eyed right now, and he's playing Final Fantasy 16, right? And he went back and played, I don't know what he played on Xbox, but he went back and played something on Xbox, and he picked up the controller, and he was like, wow, this just fits my hand so much better. So I get it. I 100%
and it's a fair, like, it's fair to think that the Xbox controller is better. It's just that they're much closer now than they used to be. I feel like the 360 was way ahead of the PS3 in quality.
Yeah, the DualShock 3 was bad.
Yeah, so when I think of what it means to be an Xbox fan, for me, it really was like Halo and Gears. And when you think about today, what it is, okay, obviously this is just opinion. So what I'm about to say, people can disagree with, and I'm not right per se, but like for me, like if you say that being an Xbox fan is about backwards compatibility, I'm like, dude, that doesn't count. Like, come on. Like I get it's a cool feature, but like that is not, I don't identify that as being an Xbox fan.
If you doesn't count to me, because I have that on PC.
Yeah, and if you tell me it's Game Pass, I'll almost give you that, in the sense that like it's gaming at a certain caliber for a certain price. But like to me, once again, you're just like, that's a subscription service. So it's like what you're breaking it down to me is like, or you could say, oh, it's Bethesda. Oh, it's id Software. But I'm like, okay, but is it though? Because like those were only like Xbox things as of a few years ago when they acquired them. Not to mention, with the exception of Starfield, all those games have still came to other platforms, and Starfield probably will too. So like for me personally, the identity to me really comes down to like Halo and Gears and the Xbox controller. Obviously, for a lot of people, you could throw in Forza. I've never been a racing guy.
Yeah.
And back when I was younger, it was Fable. So to me, it's like the things that really identify Xbox. The controller, it's negligible now because PlayStation controller is so good. Gears and Halo, they've gotten worse over the years. They have not gotten better. They've continued to get worse. And to go back to another point you said, I can't identify with any studio or any creative lead on the Xbox side, when I think of PlayStation, I think of, oh, I'm getting Naughty Dog, I'm getting Sony Santa Monica, I'm getting Guerrilla, I'm getting Insomniac.
And you can name people within that, like
Ted Price from Insomniac, Neil Druckmann from the last,
Kojima as well.
Like, Kojima, what's his name? That's now the CEO. Herman Holst was of Guerrilla. Like, and I can name these studios, I can name these IPs, I can name these people.
Yeah.
When I go to Xbox, I can't name Epic anymore. They sold Gears, so they started Coalition. Okay.
Yeah.
I know what Coalition is. It's the Gear studio that was made, and like we used to be able to name Rod Ferguson. He's not there anymore. Also, Rod Ferguson's vision for Gears, I just didn't like as much as what came before.
Sure.
And you got 343, which, like, I'm very familiar with the studio because I loved Halo as an IP so much. I followed their trajectory, but like, 343 is not Bungie. Bungie is gone, and obviously their games have not been as good as Bungie's. So it's like, okay, I don't really know them either. I guess I could say Playground Games is fair. It's just I haven't followed them because I don't really play Horizon.
Yeah.
And then all the other studios have been recently purchased or a long-time third party. So it really feels like the only identity for me in Xbox is things they used to have or currently have but aren't as good as they used to be. So yeah, I do feel like the identity is very easy to nail down for PlayStation or Nintendo, but it's just really not there for Xbox. So
yeah, which actually, like, to end that off, that actually makes me double down on what I'm saying about Microsoft, and this brings it back to the conversation about PlayStation. What you said there makes me identify that what people think of Xbox, or what someone who of rational and logical thought such as yourself thinks of Xbox as a fan, is that it's about, ultimately, just like PlayStation, it's about the mascots. You think about the Fables, you think about the Halos, you think about the Gears from days of yore, and ultimately, like, even though that might have gone by the wayside, especially in the 8th generation and the early 9th generation, as we know, this recent showcase, to me, is like writing on the wall that Xbox fans have been longing for this for a long time, that a very traditional style about the game showcase. I mean, like, I listened to you and Josh talking Sacred Icon about this showcase, and like to hear Josh like enjoying it and loving it is like, that's exactly what the fuck should have been going on for years with Xbox, and that's what that brand is about. Like, Xbox tout on about services and accessibility and stuff. That to me has always been mumbo jumbo marketing word salad. Yes, it's cool
they don't
features,
have the games.
and it's only something to tide you over. Like, what was that? What's the word they use for, like, basically instant, like, upgradification from, like, old Xbox games to the newest version?
Smart delivery.
Call it?
Smart
delivery. Yeah. It's stuff like that where it's like, dude, like, yeah, cool, awesome,
Suspend,
I love it.
Resume.
Yeah, I love it. It's brilliant, but ultimately, like,
it just doesn't matter.
What you've just said and what everyone is hyped about right now is exactly what everyone says all the fucking time, and we say this about PlayStation and Nintendo all the time, is that it's about the games, it's about the mascots, it's about putting a face to the studios. And that brings it back to PlayStation, in that if this is a pivot for Microsoft to do something more traditional, to return to the archives and figure out how and why the 6th and 7th generation works so well for them, it will be a case of PlayStation going, oh shit, not only has Microsoft got all of this random bollocks like smart delivery and Game Pass and accessibility, which does matter, but now what matters more is they've got games that contend with us. They've got mascots that go alongside, that can, they have a Fable character that can compete with, a fucking Kratos. They have a, Marcus Phoenix coming back that can, again, compete with our, I don't know, Joel or Ellie or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's all there, and it feels, it's exactly what I've been saying for so long. This is the shit we've been waiting for from Xbox, and it'll be interesting to see how Xbox basically fight on the back burner, and not necessarily fight on the back burner. That's the wrong word, because that implies that they're already kind of down a notch, which they aren't. They're above. They're punching down, but they it'd be interesting to see how they respond, how they're receptive to what Microsoft does, and I think that's kind of my answer to your question in many ways. So,
yeah, okay. Well, Joe, we're going longer, which is awesome because my wife hasn't got home yet, but she'll be home soon. So I just want to. Here's what I think I'm going to do. We have a few more articles left. I'm just going to just give you a quick kind of rapid fire on these. Crash Bandicoot, the remaster trilogy that came out, I don't know, 7 years ago or so at this point, just hit 20 million units sold. So that goes to show people still love Crash Bandicoot. Love to see it. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. I wonder if Sony right now are kicking themselves though and being like, "Shit, we shouldn't have given that away to Activision." But,
well, yeah. Obviously, they didn't have the rights to Crash, but they had the rights to those original games, so it's kind of back and forth here.
Yeah.
One thing I want to touch on real quick: we talked about how Destiny 2, the final shape, it needed to perform well for Sony, but because if it didn't, like Sony was going to take over Bungie. That's how that stuff worked. And we were talking about how it was having a lot of launch issues and servers being down. That was a problem, but the large consensus over the expansion and its quality is that it's one of the best ever. It's very linear Halo campaign kind of designed. People are loving that. It's got a 92 on OpenCritic, 94% critics recommend. People are loving it. So that's great to see. Seems like Bungie's back at it.
Yeah. Up there with the Witch Queen in terms of the DLC. And I mean, I actually saw on Instagram like I think the ending cutscene or something with is it Clyde or Clive, the robot guy that everyone loves?
Oh, it's not either of those, is it? Clyde?
Is it?
Cade. It's Cade.
Cade. Yeah. Clyde. Clyde.
Yeah.
Like he and like he's doing like a long speech and stuff and talking directly at the player and stuff, and it was quite like that's pretty good storytelling right there.
Yeah. So happy for Destiny players and for Bungie. Another story that came from Game Informer. Xbox's Sea of Thieves was the most downloaded PlayStation 5 game in the month of May. So Microsoft bringing their games over to PlayStation. It's literally the most popular game on the console for a month. So crazy to see.
This is how they get you. This is how they do you.
There'll be more to come. I'm sure. And Metal Gear Solid Delta's classic visual filter usable with either control style, Konami confirmed. So the TLDR of it is the original Metal Gear Solid 3 had this, what people like to call the piss filter over it, this yellow filter. And in the remake that appears to be gone, it's much more smoother, realistic, kind of the color saturation is different there. Well, they've confirmed that you're going to be able to turn that back on if you're an original player who likes that. It's preferred.
Yeah, we were having conversations about that in the Discord, actually, after the latest. I think it was based on the Xbox Showcase, wasn't it? Where they showed off like a proper trailer of it. And was it DHR that was talking about it? I think it was DHR.
Yeah, I think so.
Because he was quite an advocate for that piss filter. He likes the way it just looked and stuff, and how it was a representation of that time and stuff. I personally actually prefer the remake color style and the
I like it, but I'm not somebody who has an attachment like you. So
but I think that's really cool. The modularity of having the control style not limited to the piss filter and stuff, because that would be kind of shit. And again, shout out to Wes, because Wes was literally saying that like 2 days before this was announced. He was like, I hope you can change regardless of whether you're in old style or new style. And here you go, big answer.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. We're going to go ahead and close it on that, but I will just say the only things we didn't get around to today was hands-on report from the PlayStation blog on both Lego Horizon Adventures and Astrobot, and I'll just say that they both look amazing. Looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. 2 great titles that are more family-friendly coming this year. I'm definitely going to buy Astrobot. I'm open to buying Horizon, even though I'm not a huge fan. I know Joe's not either, so I doubt he'll ever play that, but I might like it more than their base games, so that'd be kind of cool. But yeah, all right, that's it for the stories today, guys, and we've pretty much covered everything. This was a little bit longer of an episode. I had a blast talking to you. We really got into the weeds of things, Joe.
Yeah, we did. Very nuanced.
Do you have to do patron shoutouts, or do you have the thing made now for it to be in the video?
No, I have the thing you made, so we don't have to shout it out live.
That's awesome,
so they'll hear it after this. So.
Yeah, you'll hear the patron shoutouts. So let me just kind of pitch our stuff, and then we'll get out of here, guys. Thank you so much for listening. We just appreciate that most for support. But if you guys would like to go a step further, on patreon.com/criticalframes, we only have one tier. It's $5. It's the all access tier where you get an extra episode a month, Critical Frames Plus. Right now we have a Final Fantasy VII Remake episode up there for you to enjoy. It's over an hour long. There's Discord benefits, the ability to send in a question and have it read and answered on the show every week, and have your name shouted out at the end of the podcast. So if you guys want to do that, it's $5 over on Patreon. That's all we have. It's just a one tier. Everyone's on the same level. If you guys want to write in or leave a voicemail, you can send that to criticalframes@gmail.com. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, where our boy Wes is running that and having a great time, that is @criticalframes on Twitter. But yeah, guys, thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here. Any final words from you, Joe?
No, fire episode. One thing I will say is you've done your question like I think twice or 3 times in a row now. I'm slacking. I keep forgetting to think of one.
The thing is I think what it is really is it's not me trying to take the spotlight. It's,
no.
Yeah, it's we've both not talked about it beforehand, and then I just come up with one in the moment. So that's what it is.
I just forget. I'm
you
a
should
bad
definitely
co-host.
do the next one if you can recall. So
yeah, I'll make a note.
No problem at all. And also, guys, if you're a patron and you want to tell us what you want the special topic of the episode to be, unless it's something heinous, we'll go with it. So there's another little perk for you. So
even if it's about Stellar Blade and its lace.
Yeah. Well, I'd love to talk about it. It'd be awesome. I love that game. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you for listening to another episode of Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast. We can't wait to talk to you next week. You guys have a great one. We'll talk to you later. Peace out.
Peace. Critical Frames, a PlayStation podcast, is created in partnership between Brian Arvett and myself, Joseph Smalley. It's available on all mainstream audio and video feeds, and all music featured in the show is by Caleb Webster. We're incredibly grateful to the following All Access Pass patrons for the support they've shown for this independent venture: Darren.jpg, Diente de Hombre, Music Tree 23, Mustard Chief, Trickster, and Wesley Types.